Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Hero System. Obtain teleportation ability at the beginning. Chapter 41. Peter. Leo was a little surprised. Looking at Peter, who kept dodging among the crowd of lizards, his thoughts surged, and he threw more than a dozen lizardmen surrounding Peter directly against a wall, and smashed the wall. The lizard man was knocked out and passed out. Hoo-hoo. Thank you, Black Emperor. The enemy was dealt with by Leo. Peter, who was finally relieved, supported his knees, bent over and panted heavily. Why are you here? This is my school. Peter stood up and responded. After seeing the fainted lizardmen, he hesitated and said to Leo, Haiwang. Regarding these lizardmen, I know how to get rid of their lizard state. Leo was taken aback, and said in disbelief, What's going on? Reluctantly, Peter could only briefly tell Leo about Dr. Connors using lizard genes to make regeneration potions. Then go make the antidote serum now. Gwen can also make serum, let her go with you, and I will help others. Peter looked resolute, and he could use his abilities better to deal with those lizardmen now than to make detox serum. Gwen, drive Connors as her mentor. I just let her hide, Peter said while taking Leo to Gwen's hiding place. A huge iron trash can. When Leo saw Gwen crawling out of the trash can in Peter's mouth, he couldn't help but praise the girl. After all, not everyone climbed into the dirty, smelly trash with the courage the ones in the dumpster, especially the women. Peter. Gwen threw herself into Peter's arms. She was really frightened just now. After giving his girlfriend a big hug, and comforting him, Peter said anxiously, Gwen. You and the Black Emperor go to the Osborne building, find out the cross-species gene transfer files, and then make absolute serum, that blue color serum, number 12,389. Black Emperor. Hearing Peter's words, Gwen raised her head from Peter's arms, and finally saw Leo standing behind Peter, looking at her with a smile on her lips. Hello, Black Emperor. I'm Gwen. I was scared just now. I didn't see you. I'm so sorry. Pushing Peter away, Gwen stood in front of Leo blushing with excitement, a little at a loss. After all, the Black Emperor in front of her was her idol since she was a child. Looking at the excited Gwen in front of him, Leo gave a friendly smile and said, Gwen, I need your help now. Help? Gwen was taken aback for a moment, and then said excitedly, Okay, being able to help the hero Haiwang is like a dream for Gwen. Peter, let's go first. Be careful yourself. After settling down on the brave young man, Leo took Gwen and disappeared in front of Peter. In the Osborne building, followed Gwen to Dr. Connors' laboratory. After Gwen started to make the serum, looking at the countdown on the instrument, Leo breathed a sigh of relief and said to the communicator, Javi sis, put me through Phil's call. As soon as Leo finished speaking, with a bang, through the window, Leo found that some green powder was slowly falling outside. When he was wondering, Agent Phil appeared in the communicator with a somewhat frustrated voice. Leo, Mr. O, things are going badly. A green cloud just appeared centered on the Osborne building, and then the green powder that fell turned everyone into lizard monsters. Osborne building. Leo was startled, and smiled wryly. Phil, I wanted to tell you that I found the antidote. The antidote. Phil was overjoyed, but at this moment, there was another bang outside, and then a green cloud appeared again. At the same time, the green powder became thicker, and then Agent Phil communicated in the device. He yelled in horror, Mr. Leo, those lizardmen have become stronger with the increase of the concentration of green powder. We need more reinforcements. Help me contact the director. As soon as the voice fell, the communicator, there was a deafening gunshot and the roar of monsters. Osborne building. Hanging up the phone, thinking of what Phil said just now, Leo's heart moved, and the power of thought gushed out, turning into a network of thought power to search for breath. After one breath, Leo felt a powerful force full of madness on the roof of Osborne's building. Breath. Jarvis, show me what's on the roof of the Osborne building. As soon as Leo finished speaking, a picture appeared on the computer in the laboratory. A huge lizard was standing in front of a strange device, filling a tube of green potion. Canary device. Thanks to the advanced scientific and technological information collected by the I.O. group, Leo recognized this device at a glance, and then remembered the function of this device. Leo cursed. Looking at the antidote being made, Leo said, Gwen, be safe. The antidote is ready. Call Jarvis to inform me, and I will stop that monster from continuing to launch Virus's potion. Hearing this, Gwen nodded. After Leo's figure disappeared, the smart girl thought about it, opened all the fire safety doors, built a fairly solid defense for herself, and watched the 5-minute countdown. Gwen carefully hid it. At this time, just as the monster put in a virus potion again and was about to launch it, Leo suddenly appeared beside the lizard man, and under the surprised gaze of the lizard man, he waved the monster away with his thoughts. Go down and take out the antidote from the canary device. Black Emperor, it's you again. Why stop me? I'm leading mankind to evolve. The lizard man who fell from the canary device got up and shouted loudly at Leo. Obviously this lizard man was Connors, the lizard doctor who has turned into a monster. Hearing this, Leo just sneered. For this kind of monster who had given up his human identity, Leo had no desire to speak at all, and then under Connors' angry and crazy eyes, a large number of words appeared on Leo's hands under the control of thought power. The silver electric light turned into an electric whip, winding towards Connors. Seeing this, Connors' eyes were full of fear. He rolled a few times in embarrassment, and while avoiding the electric whip, he let out a strange roar. Ao noticed that all the lizardmen near the Osborne building were rushing towards the sound, and even some lizardmen who were close had already climbed up the outer wall of the building. Obviously, this was the helper called by Connors. But when Leo saw this situation, he didn't move at all. He just quietly looked at Connors and the lizardmen who were climbing slowly, with a playful look on the corner of his mouth. At this time, Peter, who was active in saving people in the city, had a bitter expression on his face, because when he was saving a white girl, one of his legs was caught by a lizard man's sharp claws, leaving several scars with deep bone visible. Wound. Thank you, Spider-Man, looking at the person in front of him who saved them from the claws of the lizard man. Carol and Sharon's eyes were full of emotion, and looking at the wound on Spider-Man's leg, a picture full of weakness, there was a flash of hesitation on the sweet face of Yi, thinking of the scene where he saw someone using his ability and calling him a monster in the past. Carol couldn't help but beat his heart, but watching Spider-Man's leg dripping continuously after bleeding, he finally mustered up his courage and grabbed Spider-Man, who was about to limp and wanted to leave. Then, under Peter's puzzled eyes, a green spot of light shone on his hand, facing Peter's injured place, covering it. You're a mutant, Peter said incredulously after only a dozen seconds, looking at the recovered legs. Hearing this, Carol's face darkened, and he thought, the next step is to call me a monster. Thank you so much. Your abilities are great. Hearing this, Carol blinked incredulously, seeing Spider-Man who had already rushed to the distance to help others. His eyes shone with a strange brilliance, then he bit his lip, with a look on his face. With a firm look, he walked over to a moaning man who was injured across the street. The chaotic city, the screaming crowd, and the entire Manhattan area seemed to be covered by green clouds. Seeing the people around you turn into crazy monsters inexplicably, it seems that everyone has lost hope and can only helplessly hiding behind the police, watching the monsters attacking the police again and again. His face was numb. Agent Phil aimed at the lizard man running towards him, with a trace of helplessness on his kind face, and finally pulled the trigger, shooting through the lizard man's knee. How long before reinforcements come? Chief Stacy wiped the blood on his face, replaced the life-healing device on his wrist with an energy block, activated the life-healing device again, and the wound on his shoulder slowed down. Slowly recovering, at this moment he is extremely grateful to the inventor of this life-healing instrument. Reinforcement troops are coming soon. Just now, the Black Emperor said that he found the antidote. Let's hold on. Looking at the tired-looking Director Stacy, Agent Phil told the good news. The Black Emperor. You can contact the Black Emperor. Looking at this man named Phil, Chief Stacy, who knew the man's identity, was surprised. Yes, Agent Phil nodded affirmatively. Hearing this, Chief Stacy, who was full of confidence in the Black Emperor, had hope on his face, and shouted at the exhausted policeman behind him, "Everyone, hold on. The Black Emperor has found the antidote." Oh, hearing the word, Black Emperor, in his chief's words, the exhausted and desperate police cheered, and a wave of hope surged on their faces, as if they had been injected with new strength. They clenched themselves tightly again. He stared closely at the lizardmen rushing forward, and once again built a line of defense for the ordinary people who took refuge behind them. After hearing this, the ordinary people once again had a look of hope in their eyes. At this time, Emma looked at the video report taken outside, looked at the chaotic Manhattan area in the video, frowned slightly, and then dialed a number that only she and Leo knew. Witten, bring a members of the magic team, protect the home. I don't want those strange creatures to break into the house and scare old Paul, so Leo will be angry. The magic group, a secret team secretly formed by Leo and Emma, is small in number, only people, but they are all elites who are proficient in various firearms and fighting techniques, and all of them are equipped with the latest weapons developed by EO Group, and even the weapons Leo specially made for them. With the help of the armor and weapons Leo made for them, 20 of them are enough to destroy a small base. Hearing Emma's order, Whedon responded, and after counting the names of 9 people, he led them to Leo's house. In the Osborne building, Leo still looked at Connors with a cold face, and silently calculated the time until the antidote was ready. Finally, after 2 minutes, the first lizard man jumped onto the roof, followed by the second head and the third head, until it occupied the entire roof. Dr. Lizard Connors said to Leo with a frantic expression, "Black Emperor. Don't stop me, or I will tear you apart." Hearing this, Leo twitched his mouth and fell from the air with a mocking look on his face, saying, "Just rely on these ugly monsters." "Monster. No, this is perfect evolution," Dr. Lizard retorted angrily. "From a human to a monster. This is really sad. You don't understand at all. Roar, tear him apart." Following Dr. Lizard's words, all the lizardmen rushed towards Leo. Seeing this, Leo's toes pointed slightly to the ground, and a powerful electric current appeared under Leo's feet, and then along the ground, flashing silver electric light, rushed into the bodies of those lizardmen who rushed, paralyzing everyone at the same time. When the lizardmen were in the body, Leo's thoughts surged, centered on himself, and swept all the lizardmen away. As for the lizardmen who fell downstairs, Leo could only say sorry to them, but they're with the terrifying rebirth ability, presumably they won't have much problem. Looking at Dr. Lizard, who was the only one who persisted in attacking with mind power, Leo smiled slightly, but Dr. Lizard let out a roar, summoned the lizardmen to come up to help again, and at the same time took out a syringe, and put the contents inside with a crazy look. The medicine was injected into his body. After sweeping those lizard men off the roof again, a sharp claw grabbed Leo's face with a sharp roar. Leo took a closer look, but it was Dr. Lizard. It's completely different, the green skin is full of metallic color. I didn't dare to be careless, lightning gushed out of my body, I jumped back after increasing my speed, dodged the attack, and the thought force entangled away, but an amazing scene appeared. Dr. Lizard used his tail to meet the invisible thought force, while breaking the mind power rope, let out a triumphant roar at Leo, and then rushed towards Leo in cooperation with the lizardman who came up again. Leo looked at a group of lizardmen pounced, and flew into the air with a flash. After seeing the densely packed lizardmen on the 4 walls of the Osborne building that were constantly climbing upwards, a hint of impatience flashed in his eyes. Then silver lightning continuously gushed out of his body, turning into 2 silver bolts, and following Leo's hand stretched to the ground, it fell to the roof of the building like 2 bolts of thunder. Crackling, with the piercing sound of electricity, following the continuous lightning on Leo's body, the entire Osborne building seemed to be covered with a silver coat, and then the climbing lizardmen fell down one after another. Leo couldn't stand the massive release of lightning, and after taking a breath, he landed on the top of the building. At this moment, Jarvis' voice sounded, "Sir, the antidote is ready." Hearing this, Leo's eyes flashed with joy, and then the figure disappeared. Seeing this, Dr. Lizard was stunned for a moment, but the next second when Leo appeared in front of the canary device with a tube of blue potion, he recognized he who took out the potion was completely crazy. No! With a yell, Dr. Lizard stomped on the ground with his powerful legs strengthened again, jumped up, and grabbed Leo, but Leo just waved his hand, standing in midair with no strength. Dr. Lizard was swept away by Leo's thoughts. Boom! Dr. Lizard fell down, leaving a big hole, but he got up immediately, and then waved his sharp claws, grabbing at the base of the canary device. He actually wanted to destroy this device. Canary device, to organize Leo. Seeing this, Leo frowned, looked at the countdown on the canary device, and appeared behind Dr. Lizard in a flash. A lightning javelin appeared and stabbed Dr. Lizard, who was not evasive. The next moment, it exploded. Although he was seriously injured, Dr. Lizard laughed crazily, because when the lightning javelin exploded, he had already destroyed the base carrying the canary device, and now he was following him crazy laughter, falling towards the ground. Seeing this, Leo's figure flashed and appeared next to the broken canary device, and then his thoughts poured out. He held up the canary device with difficulty, wobbled up again, and then in the desperate roar of Dr. Lizard, there was a trace of silver lightning in his hand, and he grabbed the canary device whose countdown had stopped due to lack of power. Boom! In the next moment, following Leo's actions, the blue antidote shot up into the sky, bursting like extremely gorgeous blue fireworks, and then turned into a blue cloud covering the entire Manhattan, sprinkled dropped the blue detoxification powder all over the sky. No! Seeing the disabled body recovering again, Dr. Lizard roared feebly and passed out. He succeeded, Peter murmured as he watched the lizardmen around him revert to humans again. He is the hero of New York. Director Stacy looked admiring, and Agent Phil also looked admiring. Oh, at this time, as the familiar people around recovered, all the residents of Manhattan couldn't help crying with joy, and suddenly the whole Manhattan burst into cheers. At this time, after Leo put the canary device on the ground, the system issued a continuous task completion reminder. After hearing this, Leo smiled tiredly and disappeared. In the early morning, when the radiance of the sun shone on Leo's face, Leo woke up with sleepy eyes. It seemed that he hadn't woken up so late for a long time, so after a night's rest to get rid of the fatigue from yesterday's battle, Leo woke up. Al is somewhat nostalgic for the lazy feeling at the moment. Slowly getting up, leaning on the back of the bed, Leo closed his eyes again. Of course, he was not sleeping, but Leo remembered yesterday's task reminder and was contacting the system. Congratulations to the host for completing the mission, Crisis Rescuer 1. Mission description. The host played an important role in this mission. The host will be rewarded with 1 lucky draw, and the host will be rewarded with 3,500 redemption points. Quote, 3,500. Seeing this, Leo sat up straight all of a sudden, his face couldn't hide the surprise. You must know that in the previous 10 years, he completed the daily tasks on time, and only saved 36,520 in exchange point. Adding the 1,000 points that helped complete Logan's mission before, and the remaining 90 points at the beginning, it was only 37,610 points, but because he spent 5,200 points on strengthening his body afterwards, he only had 32,410 exchange points left before. Adding these 3,500 exchange points, his exchange points have reached 35,910 points. That's great. It's shortened the distance from the item I want to redeem. Leo's heart couldn't help but jump when he thought of the item he saw when he browsed the system in his spare time, but when he thought of the item after the exchange price of 50,000 points, Leo sighed faintly and continued to read the mission prompt. Congratulations to the host for completing the task, becoming famous. Mission description. It has been settled for a long time, and once it erupts, congratulations to the host for completing this mission under the catalysis of saving a city crisis. Reward the host. Choose one of the current powers, level +1. Quote. Level up by 1 level. Leo's mind roared, and then ecstasy appeared on his face. Be quiet, there are mission reminders. Leo barely suppressed the joy in his heart, forced himself to be quiet, and continued to read. The host triggers a new task. 10,000 people admire. Mission statement. Congratulations, hero. You can already be called a hero, but there is still more room for improvement as a hero. Mission reward. Choose 2 strengths +1. Mission limit. None. Time limit. None. Quote. As this task appeared, a golden yellow progress bar currently showing 0% appeared in Leo's mind. After reading all the system prompts, the excitement and ecstasy that had been suppressed before Leo finally burst out, especially after seeing the exchange points in his mind and the number of 3 lucky draws, he laughed happily. Haha, now you don't have to wait for the welfare system's lottery draw. This time, you must prove your character. Thinking of the number of welfare lottery draws that will appear in a while, Leo was happy and contacted the system to start lottery. Stop. Following Leo's thought, the rotating turntable stopped, and then a dimly radiant object appeared in Leo's hand. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the item Eternal Flower. Item introduction. A flower that never fades. Quote. With the introduction of the item, the hazy brilliance covering the item disappeared, and then a bright red rose with several lovely green leaves appeared in Leo's hand. Looking at the rose in his hand, Leo felt a little regretful, but after thinking of Emma, he lifted his spirits and murmured, "It's not bad to give it to Emma." Then draw. Leo said silently, and the roulette wheel started to spin again. Stop. Following Leo's thoughts, the roulette stopped again, and then the system sounded. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the skill, seduction technique. Skill introduction. This is a magical skill, sometimes it has unexpected miraculous effects on some specific people. Quote. Seeing this, Leo was a little confused. He didn't know what the so-called miraculous effect on specific people meant. Thinking of another chance, Leo pressed the idea of trying this seduction technique first, and prayed after that. The wheel was turned again. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the ability, Zanpakuto. Ability introduction. Zanpakuto, built with your own soul as the prototype. Born with you, died with you. Remarks. This ability has been systematically corrected and is no longer limited to the power of death. Quote. As soon as the system sound fell, a sheathless samurai sword with a black handle appeared in Leo's hand. Build it based on your own soul. Leo was taken aback, looking at the Zanpakuto in his hand. In addition to feeling the sharpness of the Zanpakuto, he seemed to feel a slight connection. In addition, he didn't feel any increase in his strength, and then he looked puzzled. If Leo had read the manga about Zanpakuto in the previous world, he would have known what Zanpakuto was like and how to release its power, but unfortunately, he hadn't read it. So Leo can only ask the system. System, why don't I feel the increase in strength? To answer this question, you need to redeem 50 points. Do you want to continue? Why don't you die? It's too dark. Leo cursed angrily, looked at the prompt in his mind, gritted his teeth, and chose yes. Zanpakuto. When you know the name of the Zanpakuto you have given yourself, and you gain power through spiritual dialogue with it. Its state is divided into initial solution and swastika. Spiritual dialogue. Seeing this, Leo was puzzled, and muttered a few words in his heart, but there was no gain. Leo had no choice but to let it disappear. Following Leo's thought, Zanpakuto it disappeared, and then Leo felt that there was something more in his soul. He froze for a moment, his heart moved, and the next moment Zanpakuto appeared in Leo's hand again following Leo's thoughts. This way, it's convenient. Leo praised. Although he can't use the so-called shiji and swastika yet, this doesn't hinder his good mood at the moment, because these 3 lottery draws have proved that his character is still good. Yes, at least he didn't draw any strange things like little angels that never miss out, and what made him most happy was that it allowed him to choose one of the current rewards to increase his strength by 1 level. Mind power, teleportation, lightning. Leo thought about it. As for the Zanpakuto he just got, Leo didn't think about it. The strength is better. Thinking of this, Leo evaluated silently in his heart for a while, and then used this opportunity to control the lightning with the highest damage ability. Following Leo's thoughts, a mysterious force appeared in Leo's mind, and then Leo felt his body was extremely warm, and he couldn't help closing his eyes when he felt comfortable. After a while, the current disappeared. Leo opened his eyes and felt the powerful power in his body completely different from before. Leo said excitedly, Mutant ability. Level 4. The 4th level mutant ability is a completely different ability from the previous level. Leo feels that if he kills the 3rd level self now, it will be effortless. At this point, he finally understands the horror of Magneto and Professor X, not to mention that they have been immersed in their abilities for decades. The accumulated experience of using abilities over the past few decades has allowed them to control their abilities to the peak, and this is also the huge gap between Leo and them. The gap, if Leo is a 4th level junior, they are the pinnacle of the 4th level. Leo has not tested the power of his level 4 ability now. After all, he is still in his bedroom, but he is very interested in another skill that he won in the previous lottery, the art of seduction. Just looking at this name, it's very pornographic and violent. Leo rubbed his chin with a smile on his face. After feeling that his physical strength had been exhausted, Leo activated the seduction technique. Bang! There was a clear sound, and Leo disappeared amidst the smoke. The next moment after the smoke disappeared, a stunning beauty full of charm appeared in Leo's bedroom. With a slender figure of 1.8 meters, a pair of fair-skinned and slender legs that are more than 1 meter long, fully interpret the meaning of the legs, long straight black hair hanging down to the waist, and a stunning face that looks like it has been polished by an artist. A pair of blue eyes are full of charm and provocation, like 2 pools of spring water. Something feels wrong. After the skill was activated, Leo looked at his hand and murmured in a low voice, then his eyes slowly moved down. After seeing 2 clusters of white flowers, Leo finally knew what happened. His face turned pale instantly, and then he asked about the system in his mind full of anger. What is this seduction technique? Answering this question requires 50 redemption points. Do you want to continue? Seeing this prompt, Leo chose yes without thinking. He didn't want to be a woman for the rest of his life. In this case, how could he go out to meet people, and how could he be worthy of Emma? The technique of seduction. This technique can change into a beautiful woman or a beautiful man. When the caster becomes a beauty surrounded by clouds and mist, in addition to the charm of the face, the proportion of the body will also be corresponding variation. Seduction doesn't work on children or people who aren't lustful. Remarks. After system revision, this skill is no longer limited to ninja chakra drive, but it cannot be disarmed by itself. This skill will be automatically disarmed after 24 hours. Quote. It will be released automatically after 24 hours. Seeing this, Leo finally let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, the door of Leo's bedroom was pushed open. Leo. Hearing this familiar shout, Leo was taken aback for a moment, then turned his head stiffly and looked towards the door. Tony, who opened the door and came in, was also stunned when he saw the strange woman on the bed. As amazement welled up in his eyes, 2 meandering streaks of blood flowed from his nostrils. Get out, Leo yelled, and pushed Tony out with his thoughts. His face turned pale with anger. Just now he was glad that no one saw his current appearance, but he didn't expect. At this time, Tony was completely confused, unconsciously wiped the blood under his nose, and thought in confusion, who is this woman? She is the best. Now is not the time to think about this. No, could this be Leo's new love? Impossible. Leo doesn't look like such a person. But the ability to push me out just now is somewhat like Leo. Thinking of this, the appearance of the woman just now flashed in Tony's mind, the eyes that looked very much like Leo, and the face that was very similar to Leo. Is that woman Leo? Leo is a woman. Tony couldn't help being taken aback by his own thoughts, his heart pounding, his face full of bewilderment, and then he was completely unbelievable and even did it himself. Unsure of the 3-point expectation, he carefully pushed open a crack in the door again, and then saw the stunning beauty who had already put on her clothes and was glaring at him angrily. Leo, Tony called speculatively. Hearing this, Leo gave Tony a blank look, stretched out his hand to the cautious Tony at the door, pulled Tony in with his thoughts, and then closed the door. You are really Leo, so you are a woman. Seeing this, Tony exclaimed as if he had discovered the most incredible thing in the world. And Leo still had an angry expression on his face, remembering that Tony broke in just now and ruined his innocence. Bah, it's not innocence, it's because he saw himself naked, it's not right, it's. Tony looked at the beautiful woman who was grasping his neckline and was lost in thought, swallowed, and at the same time a strange thought came to his mind. He said it directly without thinking. That, Leo, since I found out that you are a woman, I wonder if I can have a good time with you tonight. Hearing this, Leo woke up from his own train of thought, looked at Tony with expectant eyes. The corner of Leo's mouth twitched slightly, showing a charming smile, and at the same time a dangerous coldness flashed in his eyes. He stretched out his hand and slightly twitched. Lowering Tony's chin, pulling the distance between Tony and himself closer, he licked his lower lip, and sneered, "Hey, right. I'll make you so hard." As soon as the words fell, he fell onto the bed, and then rushed over. Leo, don't be like this, my clothes are going to rot. Hearing Tony's cry, the housekeeper Belle and Eddie looked at each other, and Eddie sighed like an adult. Mr. Stark must have not knocked on the door again, and he will be beaten by the teacher again. A moment later, when Leo finished venting his anger and stood up refreshed, Tony rubbed his swollen eye sockets, straightened his messy clothes, and said, "You can't be gentle. You know now she is a beautiful woman." Then she asked curiously, "What is going on here?" Hearing this, Leo smiled helplessly and said, "It's nothing, after 24 hours, it will recover." With a look of pity on his face, Tony exclaimed, "What? You'll recover?" Hearing this, a cold light flashed in the corner of Leo's eyes. Seeing this, Tony put on a smile, and finally remembered the reason why he came to Leo, and said seriously, "Haha. Well, I came here this time to ask for a favor." "What trouble? You can't solve it." Leo raised his eyebrows with a trace of doubt. The information on the Jericho missile has been stolen. What? Hearing this, Leo was startled. Although this technology is not important to me, Tony. But my Stark's things can't be given to others for nothing. Tony looked cold. Any clues? That's why I came to you. Tony nodded, turned on his mobile phone, and then a stereoscopic image appeared. After seeing a short man with a wretched face disappear inexplicably from the screen, Leo called out, "Mutant." Keith, who was sitting in the hamburger restaurant looking at the black USB flash drive in his hand, had a proud expression on his face, because just 2 hours ago, he used his mutant ability to steal a very important copy from Stark Industries information, and he thinks that he has not alarmed anyone. Of course, this is also due to his confidence in his own ability. Invisibility. This is his mutant ability, and when he uses his ability, he will not be detected by any technological detection method known so far, and this is why Tony found Leo. After all, this ability is really troublesome. Once discovered, he will disappear again, and you can't detect it, so you must hit it with one blow. Under such conditions, Leo is undoubtedly Tony's best choice. After all, Leo is the Black King. Without attracting anyone's attention, Leo appeared at the back door of a hamburger restaurant in Queens, and this is where the thief that Jarvis captured using the Citywide surveillance finally disappeared. Walking to the back door of the burger shop, Leo used his thoughts to unlock the door and walked in. As soon as he entered the door, Leo smelled a bloody smell, and then at the kitchen door of the burger shop, Leo saw a man in white clothes. The man's body that the chef took down on the ground. Frowning, Leo walked out of the kitchen. In the empty dining area of the burger shop, he finally saw the man whom Jarvis had captured. Looking at the man who was munching on the burger, in order to prevent the man from escaping, without the man noticing, Leo filled every inch of the burger shop with his thoughts, and then said in a cold voice, "Why did you kill that man?" Hearing Leo's voice, Keith, who was eating a hamburger, was startled. He looked in the direction of Leo's voice and found that there was one more person. "The front and back doors are locked. How did this woman get in?" "Ha, beauty. Does the 10 Rings gang need a reason to kill someone?" Keith smiled disdainfully. Although the woman who appeared suddenly seemed a bit mysterious, Keith was not worried at all, because he was confident in his ability, and instead when he saw Leo's face, a look of obscenity appeared on his face, and then he said with a lewd smile, "Beauty, you are so beautiful, let me have fun." Hearing this, Leo's face darkened, and while secretly cursing this seductive technique as cheating, he secretly remembered the 10 Rings gang that the man said, and then saw the lewd light in the wretched man's eyes, and a murderous intent gushed out of his body. The wretched man who felt Leo's killing intent was startled, and his figure disappeared, obviously using his own ability. Leo didn't worry about this at all. He smiled coldly, and his mind came out, and after feeling the breath that had already run towards the window, a playful look appeared on his face. After a while, seeing that he couldn't open the window wrapped in Leo's thoughts, Keith appeared with a face full of panic, and asked Leo loudly, "What did you do? Who are you?" Hearing this, Leo raised his eyebrows. Without any nonsense, the surge of thought power directly controlled this person, and then under the terrified eyes of the man, controlled the power of thought, and found a black USB flash drive from the man's coat pocket. After getting it in his hand, he asked, "Who sent you to steal this information? Is it the 10 Commandments gang you just mentioned?" Looking at the black USB flash drive in Leo's hand, Keith, who knew that his mission failed and would end badly, had a look of madness in his eyes, and shouted, "The 10 Rings will conquer the world." The poison in his mouth stopped breathing under Leo's surprised eyes. Seeing this, Leo put down the man's body and sighed softly. He is obviously a murderer, but he made himself look like a martyr. Why bother? After speaking, Leo disappeared. The next moment, Leo appeared in his bedroom, looking at Tony sitting in his bedroom, waiting for him. Leo threw the USB drive over. "Here. It's really efficient." Seeing that only 5 minutes had passed on the watch, Tony's mustache shook a few times and praised. "What do you want to do again?" Hearing this and seeing the strange look in Tony's eyes, Leo's heart tightened. "Ahem. Well, Leo, don't you want to stay at home like this today?" Hearing this, Leo raised his eyebrows and looked at Tony. "You look like this. What do you do if Emma sees you when you come back? You don't want her to see you like this." Hearing this, Leo frowned and said, So, Just take this opportunity, let's go relax together. Aren't you thinking of some crooked idea? Looking at Tony with a smile on his face, Leo's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. How is it possible? You are Leo. You are a man. How could I have any thoughts about you? Tony's mouth trembled unnaturally, and he walked to Leo with a sincere look on his face. Seeing this, Leo finally nodded, and said with a ruthless face, "You are not allowed to tell other people about this matter, if any word gets out. I will let you say goodbye to your blessing for the rest of your life." After finishing speaking, Leo's eyes swept across Tony's crotch with a trace of cold electricity. Hee. Tony laughed unnaturally. He couldn't say that he had secretly ordered Jarvis to keep Leo's current photo, and it was a super high-definition version. "Let's go, beautiful girl." In order to hide his guilty conscience, Tony slapped Leo's upturned buttocks with a sudden slap. Bang! Seeing this, the corner of Leo's mouth twitched, and he punched Tony on the nose. After Tony's nose bleeds again, Leo, who didn't want more people to see his current appearance, pressed Tony directly, shoulder, launched a teleport, and then the two disappeared. At this time, after the death of Keith, who stole the Jellicoe missile technology, far away in the Middle East, in a hidden and unnamed base that few people know, a bald man with a vicious face as walking heavily walked into a room full of darkness. In the darkness, a long-haired figure exuding a terrifying aura sat quietly on the ground. When the bald man who walked in saw the man's back, the viciousness disappeared from his face. With a look of fear on his face, he lowered his head, leaned over, and said in a trembling voice, "My lord, Keith's action has failed." Hee. What a surprise for me. The voice was low, although it was a little old, but it was full of domineering. "Then what to do next, my lord? Since you can't get the technology, then find an opportunity to bring that genius inventor over directly, and let him contribute to our cause." Following these words, a pair of sharp eyes in the darkness suddenly open it to show your arrogance. 24 hours later, after a puff of smoke dissipated, Leo touched his familiar body with his familiar palm, and said with a look of relief, "This seductive technique is finally lifted." Seeing Leo, who had recovered, Tony blinked regretfully, sighed and said, "Actually, you look really pretty." At this point, Tony shuddered and noticed the coldness in Leo's eyes. Mang then hurriedly swallowed the rest of the words. He didn't want to be left with some scars on his face by Leo. After all, he had an appointment with a newly promoted supermodel tonight. "Let's go," said to Tony, and disappeared under Tony's regretful expression. The next moment, Leo appeared in his bedroom. As soon as he appeared, Emma's voice came out, "Leo." Perhaps because of Emma's ability, every time Leo appears, Emma will immediately discover that Emma's ability has been growing continuously for so many years, although her ability has not yet reached level 4, but it is already the peak of the 3rd level, and it is only a step away from the 4th level. "It's me," Leo replied. Looking at Emma, who was trying on clothes in the cloakroom, Leo took out the eternal flower he had hidden yesterday, walked behind Emma, and hugged her gently with his left hand. After touching Emma, he took a deep breath on Emma's neck, smiled slightly, and raised the eternal flower in his right hand to Emma. Seeing this, a pleasant smile appeared on Emma's beautiful face. She took the words in Leo's hand, sniffed it lightly, turned around and kissed Leo's lips deeply with full of affection. After a long time, when both of them were breathing heavily, Emma gently pushed Leo away, pulled her drooping hair closer to her ears, looked at Leo with a pair of beautiful eyes and said, "Thank you, Emma. Thank you for your hard work." Seeing the exhaustion on Emma's face, Leo felt distressed. For so many years, Emma's IO group has been managed in an orderly manner by Emma. Although Emma never shouted tired, but Leo can always feel Emma's exhaustion from Emma's inadvertent expression. Reaching out to cover Leo's hand touching her face, Emma gently rubbed it twice, with a warm smile on the corner of her mouth, and said, "This is my home, you are my lover, these are what I should do." Hearing this, Leo's heart warmed up, but when he was moved, he suddenly remembered that the two of them seemed to have not been together for a long time, and then a thought popped up in his mind, and then with a smile on his face, he couldn't wait to say, "Ma, put down what you are doing and let's go on a trip." "Okay." Emma was stunned for a moment, didn't ask why, just smiled softly, and agreed, with a face of obedience. If other people who were familiar with Emma saw this scene, their jaws would drop in shock. This kind of Emma has a little bit of strength in front of other people on weekdays. Just do what you say. For Leo, who has teleportation, traveling is always so convenient, so the moment Emma agreed, Leo took Emma's hand and launched the teleportation. When two people stayed together, time always passed quickly. During these 2 months, the two ignored all the troubles from the outside world, and just enjoyed their two-person world to the fullest. They walked across the sky hand in hand in Bolivia's Mirror of the Sky, enjoyed a romantic candlelight dinner in a wooden house floating on the water in Maldives, and experienced a leisurely life full of national taste in Ziswangana. Now they have come to the North Pole and plan to take a look at a natural wonder, the Northern Lights. On the deserted snowy field, Emma was wearing a gorgeous silver robe. Like a mysterious ice queen, she leaned gently on Leo, waiting for the arrival of the aurora. Although the temperature was extremely low at this time, it was not a problem for Leo. While a psychic mask blocked the cold wind, it kept the psychic mask at a fairly good temperature. Maybe it's because of the bad luck of the two of them, they haven't seen the aurora for a week in a row. Seeing the disappointment on Emma's face, Leo's heart moved, and with a smile on his face, he said to Emma, "Enjoy the spectacle that belongs to you alone, Emma." As soon as the words fell, Leo teleported directly into the air under Emma's puzzled eyes, and then a large number of electric lights appeared on his body. When Emma was surprised, a huge lotus flower composed of lightning appeared, and then under Leo's control, it slowly bloomed, and after waiting for the lotus to bloom to the extreme, one after another silver lotus kept gushing out, and in Emma's surprised eyes, it occupied the entire sky and turned into silver sea of flowers. "It's so beautiful." Emma looked obsessed. With the refinement in the sea of flowers blooming to the extreme, as if blown by the wind, a large number of petals danced in the swaying flower branches, and fell down profusely, turning into a silver rain of flowers, and then 2 flowers appeared in the flower rain. A figure made of electric lights danced gracefully. Looking around, it was exactly what she and Leo looked like. Seeing this beautiful and thrilling spectacle, Emma even forgot to breathe. Under Leo's control, the lightning kept changing its shape. It seemed that the violent energy was just an obedient subject in Leo's hands, and Leo was the monarch he had to obey. Finally, when Leo came back to Emma with a bit of panting, several words, "I love you," made of lightning appeared in the air, and then, under Emma's moved eyes, they burst open and turned into a burst of silver lightning. The light rain disappeared. Seeing the sweat on Leo's head, Emma reached out to help Leo wipe it, hugged Leo, and gently snuggled up to Leo's chest, full of emotion, said, "Thank you, Leo. I'm so happy." Just be happy. Although Leo was exhausted due to excessive use of energy, after hearing Emma's words, Leo felt that it was all worth it. Just when Leo felt the heartbeat between the two, Leo frowned, because a familiar voice appeared in his mind just now, the voice of Professor X. Being interrupted at such a tender and romantic time, even Leo felt a little upset, and then asked with a trace of resentment, "What's the matter, Professor?" As if hearing Leo's resentment, Professor X smiled slightly in Leo's mind, and explained in his usual gentle voice, "I'm sorry, Leo, because I can't reach you by phone, I only use brain wave. I will contact you." Hearing this, thinking of where he is now, Leo was relieved, and a big question mark appeared in his heart. What kind of things would make the professor use the brain wave device? Thinking of this, Leo's voice was full of doubts. Yi asked, "What's the matter, Professor?" Logan found it. There were vulgar shouts and curses in the noisy crowd. Under the dim light, the drinkers in thick winter coats wantonly vented their anxiety. Looking at the man with a generous back on the arena, the gamblers around the iron cage dueling stage danced their arms wildly, and those gamblers who put their money on the man's opponent shouted even louder, trying to make the man's opponent regain their strength through their cheering sounds. "Brace yourselves, beat that man down, and win your money back." But it was useless. No matter who went up, facing the man like a beast, he couldn't last a few rounds. Even if the man was still pouring himself alcohol, he looked drunk. Taking a sip of wine and throwing away the cup in his hand, Logan staggered a little. Although the alcohol in his body would be decomposed by his powerful constitution in less than a few seconds, allowing him to regain consciousness, but Logan was still enjoying it. Looking at the strong man punching from the opposite side, Logan smiled disdainfully. After controlling his own strength to hit the opposite man with 3 punches and 2 kicks, he took another glass of wine and drank it down. The cycle continued like this. Only when no one dared to challenge him, and when all the drinkers in the noisy venue left with expressions of joy or disappointment, did he swallow the wine in his glass and dangled from the dueling platform with his own clothes on. Walked down, and when he walked to the bar, the alcohol broke down and he was already sober. Taking the reward from the boss, he stuffed it into his pocket, lit the cigar in his mouth, took a puff with a face full of enjoyment, and after exhaling a large amount of smoke, he ordered a glass of wine with the boss, and was about to take a sip. When he was downing his glass of wine, he noticed a girl with a hood sitting next to him, looking at him pitifully, and raised her eyebrows. "Give her a glass of milk," Logan said nonchalantly after flicking off the ash on the cigar. Hearing this, the boss in front of the bar looked at the boxer nicknamed Wolverine in surprise, poured a glass of milk and pushed it in front of the girl who sat all night and only wanted a glass of water. "Thank you. My name is Little Naughty." Little Naughty thanked him, and carefully glanced at the man who offered him milk, his eyes filled with gratitude. Holding the milk cup tightly, Little Naughty felt a warmth penetrating into his bones, and carefully looked at this fierce man with a beast aura, who belonged exclusively to women. Oh no, it was the girl's first love. Six senses told him that the man in front of him was a good man. After all, he was willing to treat himself to a drink of milk. The Little Naughty thought so. At this moment, a drunk man with obvious scars on his face walked up to Logan, with a face full of unwillingness to lose money, and said in Logan's ear, "Give me back my money. It is impossible for a person to be beaten without being injured." Hearing this, Logan smiled indifferently, raised the wine glass in his hand, swallowed the wine in the glass, and said lightly, "If you don't accept it, you can fight again." "You monster." Maybe it was Logan's words that angered the man, or maybe his drunken head was a little unclear. After a roar, he took out a sharp dagger from his waist and pointed it at Logan's back. "Tie it over. Be careful." The little rascal, who had been watching Logan cautiously, screamed when he saw it. And Logan, who had already sensed the movement behind him with his beast-like perception, turned around suddenly, knocked out the dagger in the man's hand, and at the same time pressed the drunk man against the round wooden post behind him with his left hand, and then his face. There was a hint of ferocity on his face. Facing the man's neck, 3 sharp silver-white steel claws slowly appeared on his right hand. Seeing this scene, the drunk man suddenly came to his senses and looked at Luo with a fierce face. A large amount of fear appeared on his face. On the other hand, when Little Naughty saw it, there was a look of surprise on his face, a kind of surprise that he had found the same kind. At this moment, when the boss at the bar saw it, a fierce look appeared on his face. He took out a black shotgun, lightly pressed it against Logan's head, and said with a disgusted expression, "Monster, get out." Hearing this, Logan twitched the corner of his mouth, and when he was about to attack, a gust of cold wind rushed in from the opened door, making everyone shiver, and at the same time, 3 figures with a fierce aura appeared in front of everyone. "Look, who is this?" The man who looked somewhat similar to Logan said with disdain. And at this time, the man who came with them, with a pale green face and a stench on his body, glanced at the boss holding a shotgun playfully, and then a red whip shadow with great strength came from his mouth. After shooting out, knocking the shotgun into the air, he retracted it into his mouth again. Seeing this, the little rascal swallowed his saliva in shock while being disgusted. "Monster." As the weapon in his hand was knocked into the air, the owner of the arena, who had lost his life support, fell to the ground full of fear, and then ran out the door with hands and feet. After the owner of the arena ran out, Logan glanced at the 3 people in front of him, withdrew his claws, punched the drunk man with a frightened face unconscious, spit out the cigar in his mouth, and said with a trace of guard, "You are who?" "Ha, Logan, you don't know us anymore." Hearing this, the man who was the largest among the 3 and looked like a meatball said in surprise. "Should I know it?" Logan asked back, with a puzzled look on his face. Hearing this, the man who looked like a meatball patted his chest and said, "I'm Duke Frederick, he's Victor, the saber-toothed tiger Victor." Looking at the 2 people in front of him, especially after seeing the man named Victor, Logan felt unreasonably angry, and then said, "I don't know any fat people, and I don't know any saber-teeth cat." Hearing this, Foyle, who hates people calling him fat the most, looked angry, and rushed towards Logan with rumbling steps. After the saber-toothed tiger showed a cold smile to Logan, black spots appeared on the tips of his fingers. The sharp claws fit and rushed over. Glancing at the little rascal who was sneaking around and trying to escape from the battlefield, the toad stuck out its disgusting tongue, swept the wine bottle off the table, and threatened, "You'd better not move." Little girl. Seeing this, Little Naughty's face turned pale, and his body couldn't help trembling. He secretly glanced at the toad staring at her, and Little Naughty mustered up the courage to secretly take off his gloves. Sawdust flew around, and in just a few breaths, the old-fashioned bar counter, which was considered passable, was torn to pieces by the three of Logan fighting together, and Logan took advantage of the blow that foil hit on his chest. The strength suddenly opened the distance, and then bent slightly, the corner of the mouth pulled a bloodthirsty arc soundlessly. Seeing the enemy pounced on him again, Logan exerted his calf silently, and when he was about to pounce, a figure in a white shirt and a pair of blue jeans appeared in front of him. Facing the two pounced, he stretched out his left hand, and then, under the surprised gazes of Logan and the little rascal, he used an invisible force to directly knock the two of them into the air. After knocking the two into the air, Leo turned his head, looked at the puzzled Logan, and softly called out with excitement in his eyes, "Logan." Looking at this strange face, Logan felt an inexplicable warmth in his heart, and at the same time, there was a lot of doubt on his face. After seeing the hollowed-out cross on the back of Leo's left hand, Logan was even more unconscious. Touching the cross on his neck, he asked with a trace of excitement that he didn't even realize, "Who are you?" Logan has amnesia. Although Leo has been prepared for this, Leo is still a little disappointed when he sees that Logan doesn't know him. But now is not the time. After showing a reassuring expression, Logan turned his head to look at the two acquaintances in front of him and said, "Long time no see." "It's you." Victor obviously recognized Leo at a glance, and Duke was even more impressed with Leo. After all, Leo had played a very exciting game with him at the time, but the toad saw Empress Leo, who didn't know him, had an eager look in his eyes, and a long tongue that could be said to be thrilling, was hesitating in his mouth, waiting to move. Little rascal looked at Leo, who was confronting these three fierce mutants, and slowly breathed a sigh of relief. After all, in terms of appearance, the handsome Leo was much better than those three, so Little Rascal quietly put on the gloves and moved carefully, and walked towards Leo, trying to avoid the toad that had been staring at him inexplicably. Seeing the actions of the little naughty, Toad's eyes flashed a hint of impatience. In his opinion, the little girl was just a mission target to be slaughtered, so without a trace of hesitation, the tongue that had already been prepared was directly thrown at the little naughty. In the past, after wrapping around the waist of Shaunati, he had to pull him directly to his side. Little Naughty hugged the round wooden pillar beside him vigorously. While resisting the toad's pull, he shouted to Leo for help. "Help me, sir." Following the toad's movements, the saber-toothed tiger Victor and Meatball Duke also rushed towards Leo. "Leave it to me." Logan, who had always looked at the saber-toothed tiger disliked, yelled, and rushed up fiercely. After the two tore together, blood sprayed up. Attacking is not a good choice for a meaty ball with a strong defense, so Leo just used his mental power to stumble hard at the ankle of the meaty ball that was running over, and the meaty ball lost its balance and rolled out directly, and then a flash of electricity appeared in Leo's hand, and he flicked it towards the disgusting tongue that was tied up with Little Rascal. The lightning flashed away, and under Leo's control, it only paralyzed the toad's tongue, and then Leo pulled the Little Rascal directly behind him with his thoughts. "You." Seeing this, the toad looked angry. While bouncing towards Leo, he opened his mouth and spit out a mouthful of thick yellow liquid at Leo. What a disgusting ability. Leo frowned, blocked the disgusting thick liquid, and directly shot the jumping toad away with his thoughts, causing it to sink into the wall. The little naughty dodged the bear hug from behind the meatball. At this moment, a police siren sounded from outside the duel field, and at the same time as it attracted everyone's attention, a strong voice came in from the outside through the loudspeaker. "Listen, the mutants inside. Give up resistance quickly, otherwise we will attack. Hurry up, my home is going to be destroyed. I didn't tell you to come here to watch from the outside. Hurry up and get rid of those horrible things." The owner of the arena standing next to the policeman begged the policeman anxiously, "Can't wait for these policemen to rush in immediately." In this regard, the police did not waver at all. After all, who would want to fight those dangerous mutants? "Logan!" Leo yelled. Not wanting to cause a commotion, Leo used his thoughts to separate the entangled saber-toothed tiger and Logan, and said, "Let's go." Hearing this, the saber-toothed tiger wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. knowing that as long as Logan wanted to leave, he would never be able to stop Leo, who possessed teleportation power, so he could only use taunts to try to arouse Logan's anger and make Logan. Jen gave up the idea of leaving here, so that he could have a good fight with himself, and then said, "Ha, do you want to escape again, puppy?" Sure enough, upon hearing this, Logan, who had always held inexplicable hostility towards the saber-toothed tiger, instantly became angry, his eyes turned cold, and he was about to pounce on him again, but at that moment, he realized that Leo had pressed his shoulder. Coming down, looking at the man who helped him, Logan barely suppressed his irritability, bared his teeth and showed a bloodthirsty smile. Looking at the saber-toothed tiger who felt good about himself, Leo's eyes were cold, and he said coldly, "If it wasn't for Logan's sake, I would have killed you long ago, and when Logan recovered his memory, he would find you settle the bill. As for now, huh." Following Leo's cold snort, a terrifying coercion appeared on Leo's body, and then a terrifying thunderbolt as thick as a bucket appeared from the sky inexplicably, and struck the saber-toothed tiger with crackling sounds, without a trace of resistance, fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, Logan retracted his claws while being surprised by Leo's strength. "Duke, this time, for the sake of the feelings we have seen in the past, take them away. Next time, don't blame me for being cruel," Leo warned, and took Logan and the little boy who had been holding on to him tightly. Naughty disappeared. Seeing the disappearing Leo and the other three, Meatball Duke swallowed in fear. You must know that the pressure he felt from Leo just now, he has only felt from Magneto. Seeing the saber-toothed tiger with only one breath left, Meatball picked him up while complaining, then walked to the unrecognizable toad and put it under his arm. He didn't want to bring two burdens and fight with the police, so he was directly blinded. Hit his head into a big hole in the wall, and then fled away from the already messed up duel arena with booming footsteps. Hearing that the inside was quiet, the guarded policemen outside winked at each other, and walked in cautiously. After seeing the empty arena, they involuntarily breathed a sigh of relief, leaving a face full of tears. The owner of the arena slowly backed out. Leo was afraid that taking Logan directly to New York would cause Logan's hostility. After all, Logan was still in a state of amnesia, so Leo only teleported a short distance, not far from the arena. Figures appeared everywhere. "Fuck, that's my home." Logan couldn't help cursing after seeing the police not far away dragging away his small car as evidence. Looking at the furious Logan, Leo felt amused, gave Logan a big hug, and said, "Long time no see." Feeling the kindness emanating from the handsome man in front of him, Logan felt that the man in front of him was familiar, so he said slowly, "That, you are." "I'm Leo." Leo. Logan thought deeply, and after a while, a wry smile appeared on his face and said, "Sorry, I really can't remember." Hearing this, Leo was disappointed and contacted the system. After spending 2,000 exchange points, he exchanged for something that he had considered long ago, memory potion. Memory potion. This is a magic potion made by a wizard. After use, it can make people fall into a deep sleep, and in the deep sleep, they can retrieve their own memories and details that exist in the memory but have been ignored by themselves. Remarks. After taking the potion, the user will experience the pain in memory again. When Leo took out the memory potion and explained the effect of the potion to Logan, Logan's eyes lit up. Relying on his beast perception and his trust in Leo from the bottom of his heart, he took advantage of the potion without any hesitation. Out took the potion that exuded a strange brilliance in his hand. As for the side effects mentioned by Leo, Logan didn't care at all, and just ignored the past. For him, experiencing it once is better than his own mind going blank. Good. Because taking this potion requires a relatively quiet environment, Leo and the two could only find a relatively quiet hotel and open a room before letting Logan, who had been impatient to wait, take it. Seeing that there was nothing unusual about Logan who fell into a deep sleep, Leo only had time to pay attention to the girl who had been following him closely since he came out of the arena. Smiling slightly, Leo, who had already guessed the girl's mutant identity, asked with a slight smile, "Why did you follow us, and if it's convenient, can you tell me about your mutant ability?" "How do you know I'm a mutant?" Hearing what Leo said, little rascal looked surprised. "Besides being mutants, why would you keep following us? After all, most people only fear us when they know our mutant status," Leo explained. Hearing this, little Naughty had a clear expression on his face. Then he licked his dry lips, and slowly said, "My name is Ma. Ah, little naughty, yes, little naughty. My ability is through the skin contact absorbs the vitality of others and the ability to possess others for a short time." "Good ability," Leo praised, and passed the water in his hand. Little rascal didn't take the water that Leo handed over. Instead, after hearing Leo's praise, he said with a look of hatred, "I hate this ability. It prevents me from living like an ordinary person." Then he seemed to collapse suddenly. He hugged his head violently, sat on the chair opposite Leo and cried loudly. Seeing the little rascal who was crying bitterly, Leo sighed softly, put down the water glass in his hand, and felt sorry for this girl who couldn't get in touch with people. Just imagine, a girl in her blooming season is the one who can get in touch with people in society. Sometimes, having the identity of a mutant who is not accepted by this world is enough, let alone having such an ability that cannot contact people, can't communicate with people normally, can't hug the person I like, as if the ability to be rejected by the whole world. How can this girl not feel hatred in her heart? With a layer of thought power covering his hands, Leo gently rubbed the head of the little naughty. Just when the little naughty was surprised that Leo could touch him, Leo said softly, "Do you hate mutants? Do you admit that you are a mutant?" Hearing this, little rascal replied without thinking, "No, I don't hate mutants, I just hate my abilities." In this case, why don't you try to accept the ability brought about by your mutant identity? After all, ability is just a tool, don't be afraid of it, try to accept it, and then control it. This may change the current situation. Now, what do you think? Accept it, control it. Hearing Leo's words, little naughty stopped crying and wiped the tears on her face. Since she got her own ability, she only had fear in her heart, only rejection, and never thought of it. Accepting this ability, when he suddenly heard Leo's words, little naughty's heart moved. He repeated Leo's words in his mouth, and began to think slowly. Seeing this, Leo smiled slightly, and looked at Logan lying on the bed, but suddenly saw that Logan, who had fallen into a deep sleep, stretched out his claws unconsciously, with pain and sadness appearing on his face. After that, a lot of sweat stains emerged from Logan's head. Seeing this, Leo was startled, afraid that Logan would hurt him unconsciously, so he could only use his thoughts to hold down the clenched hands, quietly waiting for Logan to wake up. Cuckoo. At this moment, a strange voice rang out. Following the sound, only saw a blushing little face. Leo looked at the dark night outside, and said with a smile, "It's true I've neglected you. Go and eat something, I'll pay the bill together tomorrow." Hearing this, little naughty nodded, and then asked with a hint of doubt, "Aren't you hungry?" Leo was stunned for a moment, looking at the little naughty girl with longing look on his face. He knew that the girl wanted to repay him with his concern. Then Leo did not refuse her kindness, the corner of his mouth slightly hooked, and said, "Then please bring me some food later. I still need to watch this guy." He pointed to Logan who was lying on the bed. "Okay." Hearing Leo's words, the little mischievous who felt that he was still useful nodded, and walked downstairs to the restaurant with a smile that hadn't bloomed for a long time. Logan. Looking at the bed that was already wet with Logan's sweat, Leo whispered worriedly. Buzz. At this moment, Leo's cell phone rang, and when the call was connected, Emma's nervous voice came over. "Leo, did you find Logan? Does he remember anything? Do you know any news about my sister?" Emma. "Logan doesn't remember anything now, but don't worry, he's drinking a potion now, and his memory is recovering." "That's good." Emma breathed a sigh of relief. For so many years, she has been looking for news about her sister, but there has been no news. Logan is Emma's last hope. Maybe Logan lived long enough and experienced enough things, until the little naughty fell asleep on the chair after eating, and Logan didn't wake up, but Leo could only keep focusing on the strength of his thoughts. He used his own ability to press Logan, who had begun to unconsciously wave his claws, until the sky shone a little light, and when Leo's head began to swell, Logan stopped waving his arms and moved his claws. Slowly retracted it, and then slowly sat up under Leo's expectant gaze. "Logan." Leo tentatively pressed his temple, which was throbbing because of excessive use of abilities. Leo. Shaking his head, looking at the handsome man sitting under the window looking at him expectantly. Logan was stunned, and then a big smile appeared on his face, from which he was already drenched. Jumped off the bed and said to Leo, "Leo, I'm back." The bright sunshine shines on the Xavier School for Gifted Youth, making the whole school glow like a golden light. Looking at the children who were playing with their own abilities in the sun, the face of the little mischievous is as bright and brilliant as the sun today. She has been brought here by Leo for a week, and this week is the happiest week since she got her own abilities. There are teachers who care about her, classmates who fight with her, and a cute boy who is pursuing her. Except that she still can't have skin-to-skin contact with people. Her life doesn't seem so miserable now, and the important thing is yes, after Leo's enlightenment, she is no longer afraid of her own ability, and is trying to control it, and she seems to have felt a little change, although it is still very weak, but it is enough to surprise her. Are you here? Just then, a voice full of surprise came from behind her. Turning her head around, seeing the boy running towards her, little Naughty smiled slightly, looked at the boy who was a bit timid but treated her very well, and said, "Bobby, what's the matter?" "Hoo-hoo." Panting, Bobby said, "Logan is looking for you. He said he was going to go to Mr. Leo's house." "Ah, I forgot, let's go, Bobby." Hearing this, the little Naughty was stunned for a moment, thinking that he had forgotten that Leo had invited them to his house. The little Naughty couldn't help but blame himself, and then hurriedly got out of the playground. He stood up on the chair, closed the book, and rushed to the school gate led by Bobby. At the school gate at this time, there were quite a few people standing besides Little Rascal and Bobby, Logan, Professor X, Scott, Aurora, Jean, besides that, Kai the Phantom Cat Teddy, Steelman Peter, and Burning John are all here. "I'm sorry, everyone has been waiting for a long time." Seeing everyone who was waiting for him, Little Naughty looked apologetic. "It's so hard," Burning John complained. He knew that he was going to be a guest at Leo's house. That formidable strength made Pyro, who admired the strong, admire him. In addition, because Leo also came to class occasionally, the relationship with these young mutants became more and more harmonious. "Let's go." Pinching the cigar in his hand, Logan said something, and got into the car under the guidance of the driver sent by Leo to pick them up early in the morning, and then drove to Leo's house in a mighty manner. Go. I.O. Manor, the manor named after EO Group. It is hard to imagine that in New York, an international city full of modern atmosphere, there is such a large manor full of age. When the teenagers of X Academy saw Leo's house, they couldn't help opening their mouths in surprise. Although they knew that Leo and Emma were very rich, when they saw Leo's house, which was about the same size as their school, only then did I have some more accurate concepts in my heart. The butler, Belle, had been waiting at the manor early in the morning with the little guy Eddie, so when the car that Logan and his party were riding in just appeared in his field of vision, he signaled the guard to open the door. It is worth mentioning that, because of the Lizardman incident last time, for the sake of family safety, Leo arranged all the members of the magic group directly to I.O. Manor, and what made Belle happiest was that Leo's driver also had new personnel. Whitten, the leader of the magic group, is a calm and resolute man. Logan, entering the manor, as soon as he got out of the car, an old voice came. Old Paul. Looking at the old couple standing with Aunt Lynn and waving to him, Logan was moved and seemed to think of the time when he first met the old couple, and it was the warmth of the old couple and Leo his behavior, when he was in pain, injected a ray of spring breeze into his cold heart, so he cherished this sincere feeling very much. "You're still so young. I really envy you." Old Paul patted Logan's chest with his old hands, with a look of envy on his face, but Aunt Lynn asked with a hint of unhappiness, "I didn't know you when I left. Tell me, by the way, is that cross still there?" Hearing this, Logan lighted up the cross that had been hanging on his chest. After seeing it, Aunt Lynn showed a satisfied smile on her face, and then said to the people standing with Logan with a kind smile, "Welcome to be our guest." Looking at this ordinary old couple, Professor X lamented the old couple's tolerance for mutants, and praised the old Paul and his wife. "It is our honor to know such kind people as you. You are doing great things, sir." Because reports of Professor X appeared in the newspapers from time to time, the old Paul recognized Professor X at a glance, and immediately responded to what Professor X had done to promote the peaceful coexistence of humans and mutants. Career, given considerable affirmation. Leo glanced worriedly at the old couple who had been standing outside for a long time. Out of concern for their health, he had to interrupt the greetings and said, "Okay. All right, don't stand here, let's go in. Guests, please come with me." Hearing this, the butler Belle showed a ceremonial smile and led a group of people into the hall. Smiling at Chin and Aurora passing by, after Scott pushed Professor X in, Leo pulled Logan down, and then looked at the still standing in front of him with an excited expression on his face. The mutant teens watched him intently. Are you still used to it? Little rascal. Everything is fine. Thank you, Leo. Looking at this handsome man with a gentle smile on his face, little Naughty was grateful from the bottom of his heart to the person who brought him to X Academy. Burning John looked at Leo with admiration, and asked, Mr. Leo, when will you give us another practical lesson? Wait until you become stronger. Alright, let Eddie take you around. Eddie is an inventor and has many magical things, you will definitely be interested. Because I still have something to say with Logan, so Leo can only use Eddie as a bait to send these teenagers away first. Yes, teacher, Eddie responded after hearing Leo's order. Seeing the excited faces and the mutant teenagers following Eddie away, when Leo was about to speak, Logan said to Leo with a sad and apologetic face, Leo, what about Emma? About my sister Carla. It's okay, Emma is not the kind of person who doesn't understand things. We are all sorry for Kara's disappearance, but it's not your fault, is it? Interrupting Logan, Leo gave a sigh of relief, paused slightly, thinking of the reason why I stopped Logan. I then said, through the news channels of the EO group, I found out that Victor and the others are now under Magneto. Victor. Why did he get involved with Magneto? Logan had a complicated look on his face. Regardless of how they got together, about that night, when you said they fought to kill you, I think we were all wrong. What, couldn't it be that Victor wanted to kill me before the fight happened? Logan was taken aback. No, since they are now Magneto's subordinates, I think it must be Magneto's order for them to appear there. As for you, I think it's just a coincidence. You happen to be with their mission target. As for what happened to you fighting, I think it should be Victor's personal relationship. Hearing Leo's words, Logan recalled the situation that night, then shook his body and said, you mean? You're right, I guess Magneto's target is the little rascal. Leo said slowly, recalling Toad's behavior of catching the little rascal that night. Chapter 51. Mr. Leo, Mr. Paul is calling you. Let's go, Logan. After you return to the academy, talk to Professor X about this matter. Although we don't know what Magneto is up to, but according to Magneto's past behavior, it is definitely worth our vigilance. Hearing Belle's voice, Leo patted Logan on the shoulder and asked. Okay. Logan nodded heavily, and then he and Leo walked into the living room where bursts of laughter were being heard, and participated in the discussion between Professor X and Old Paul. At this moment, on an island that is not marked on any map and cannot be observed by all satellites, in an underground fortress built by Magneto using his own ability, the three victors who failed the mission are in this building except Mystique's wanton ridicule in the hall. With blue scales and a pair of amber eyes, Mystique tapped the corner of her mouth with her blue finger and sneered, "Ha, the three came back in such a disgraceful manner. Eric, it's really neither fancy nor useful." The saber-toothed tiger, who was injured by Leo's blow, had fully recovered within a short period of time. Hearing Mystique's words, he roared angrily, "You! Shut up! Yo, you little cat, tell me what's going on." Stopping Mystique, who wanted to continue talking, Magneto gave the three of them a chance to explain with an unhappy expression. "A powerful mutant has appeared, and we are no match." Thinking of Leo, who slapped himself on the wall like a fly, Toad still had a look of fear in retrospect. "It's Leo. He's become very strong now," Meatball added, and after hearing Leo's name, Victor, the saber-toothed tiger, thought of the thunder and lightning that fell from the sky, and his body trembled involuntarily, and then the sharp his nails subconsciously grew out. Leo. Hearing this name, Magneto remembered instantly. Thinking of the young man who teleported his helmet away so that Professor X could control him, instead of being angry, Magneto smiled. He said with satisfaction, "This is a compatriot with great potential." Hearing Magneto's words, the three saber-toothed tigers hesitated slightly, surprised that they were not investigated by Magneto. They had a feeling that Magneto thought it was a matter of course for them to lose to Leo. "You guys go down." Waved his hand, Magneto let the three saber-toothed tigers go down, and said to Mystique, who had turned into Leo, "This time I have to trouble you again. Ruiwin. How's that Senator Kelly?" Mystique nodded, and took over the task, remembering the middle-aged senator who she brought back 2 days ago who hated mutants. After receiving the radiation, after preliminary observations, he has already shown some signs of awakening. This is a good start. Magneto smiled proudly, excited for the success of his experiment. Thinking of the congressman's radical speeches about mutants, Mystique Mori, who had been upset with him for a long time, sneered, "Giggle, I don't know what expression he will have when he turns into the mutant he hates the most. Go, Raven, bring me that girl." Giggle, "Okay, Eric." Knowing that this is a big event about her own race, Mystique giggled in the image of Leo, then turned and walked outside. After Mystique disappeared, she faced the empty in the lobby. Magneto let out a weak breath, and then murmured in a low voice, "If the machine is fully activated, it will kill me. For the sake of our race, I can't die, so I can only sacrifice you." In Leo's house, in the gorgeous restaurant, everyone invited by Leo couldn't help but twitch their index fingers after seeing the delicious food on the table. Finally, Emma, who was about to prepare the last dish, also sat at the dining table. Under the signal of the host Leo, everyone began to feast on Emma's satisfied expression. After seeing Eddie standing up straight behind Leo, Little Naughty was stunned for a moment and said, "Eddie, let's eat together." Eddie showed a smile to the Little Naughty, rejected the Little Naughty's kindness, and said seriously like a little adult, "I am the future butler of Mr. Leo. It's not etiquette for the butler to dine with the guests." Hearing Eddie's words, the butler Belle smiled slightly, with a look of approval. At this moment, Leo said, "Today, let's let go of your identity first. Let's go together, Belle, Eddie." "Okay, sir." As a good housekeeper, obedience to the master's order is the first element, so when Leo spoke, Belle did not refuse, but nodded to Eddie and took off his white gloves, sat down at the end of the rectangular dining table. Seeing everyone at the table with happy faces, Professor X smiled gently, and said to Leo telepathically, "Thank you for your invitation, Leo." Hearing this, Leo slightly raised his hand towards Professor X. Drinking the wine glass, he teased in his mind, "Our principal is so satisfied, do you want to raise my salary? I will consider it when you have enough classes." Professor X smiled slightly. Hearing this, Leo was speechless for a moment, shook his head and began to concentrate on dealing with the delicious food in front of him. After a meal, the guests and the host had a good time, and the distance between everyone was shortened. Everyone was very satisfied with the dinner at Leo's house, and expressed their appreciation for the chef Emma this time. "Mr. Emma, the food you cook is really delicious, especially the desserts. How can I eat my school meals in the future?" Kitty the phantom cat complained to herself as she touched her full belly. The school meals, but she seems to have forgotten the teachers who have been standing behind her, so she gets a warning knock from Aurora on the head. Ha ha. Seeing this, a group of teenagers laughed loudly. Hearing this, Emma smiled gracefully and promised, "Then come again next time." "Eddie," Leo called out to Eddie. Eddie, who knew what Leo meant, walked up to Leo, and handed over to Leo the things he had stored with his ability beforehand. "This is the latest life healing device. You don't need to replace the energy block, you can replenish your own energy." Looking at the curious mutant teenagers, Leo smiled and explained, and then took the watch-shaped device in his hand. The therapeutic instrument was placed in everyone's hands. For so many years, the life-healing instrument has penetrated into everyone's life, so for this style that has never been seen on the market, the first feeling of the Little Naughty is that it is very expensive, so he quickly refused, "This is too expensive. I can't accept it." Hearing the Little Naughty words, the corner of Aurora's mouth twitched. Knowing Leo's identity, he accepted it bluntly, and said, "Accept it. The IO group belongs to him, and he still cares about this." Then he said to Leo, "Thank you, Leo, this is a good thing." Hearing this, all the mutant teenagers were surprised by Leo's identity, and quickly buckled the healing device to their wrists. After all, this thing can save lives in critical times. The most important thing is that they can go back to the hospital. Show off to their classmates. "Logan, you don't need this, so I prepared this for you." With a faint smile, Leo took a box from Eddie's hand with exquisite patterns outlined in gold thread and handed it to Logan. As soon as he took it, Logan sniffed his nose twice, then his eyes lit up, he smiled and said, "It's handmade in Cuba, and it's still a commemorative limited edition cigar. Thank you, Leo, you still understand me." Seeing everyone's happy faces, Professor X nodded with a smile and said to Leo, "We'll go back." Leo, "Thank you. You gave us all a happy day." The mutants nodded. After Logan and his party left, looking at Emma who was tired from getting up early in the morning to prepare ingredients, Leo kissed Emma's forehead with some distress and said, "Thank you for your hard work today. I'm very happy. I don't feel tired." Emma smiled slightly, and kissed Leo with fiery enthusiasm. Then, after both of them were breathing heavily, Leo hugged Leo fiercely. Emma, then the figure flickered and disappeared. Was it a few minutes, or a few hours? Also or a few days? Congressman Kelly doesn't know. He only knows that he is in this dark prison, and the seconds are like years. Going crazy. And what scares him the most is that after being captured by Mystique, after he has passed through the radiation of Magneto's magnetic booster, his body is now slowly changing, just like what Magneto said before the radiation, he is slowly becoming a mutant, the disgusting mutant he has always rejected. This change made him desperate. "No, I don't want to become a mutant." With a painful roar, he slammed down on the window of the prison, and through the iron bars made of solid metal, he looked desperately at the man outside the window. "The sea under the cliff, a strong thought of escaping from here surged in my heart." Just when he had this thought, he was in pain and didn't realize that his hand holding the iron railing of the window was slowly changing, and then his head resting on the iron railing, with a trace of the feeling of horror, like a deformed jelly, slowly squeezed out from the gap of the iron fence, and then under the moonlight, with an expression of being frightened by himself, the whole person directly, squeeze, out. The sun was shining and the weather was good. After the Lizardman incident, Leo felt a little relaxed. Maybe it was because the citizens of New York City had an extra good neighbor. While the crime rate dropped, it also lightened Leo's burden. While thanking the diligent little spider in his heart, Leo accepted Tony's invitation to go fishing with him. Came to the place agreed with Tony. After Whedon parked the car, Leo saw Tony, just like his flirtatious character, wearing a flirtatious floral shirt, wearing a brown sunglasses, staring at the crowd incomparable, but what made Leo feel a little strange was that apart from his bodyguard Happy, he didn't see anyone behind Tony, especially the beautiful opposite gender. "Leo, you're finally here." Seeing Leo and Whedon, Tony rushed to Leo with an exaggerated smile and hugged Leo. Looking at the somewhat abnormal Tony, Leo raised his eyebrows and said, "It's just the four of us today." Of course, today is a man's event. Mr. Tony got mad at Miss Potts, so today. Before Tony finished speaking, the bodyguard Happy who was following him interrupted Tony's words with a happy face, and directly explained the reason to Leo, but after talking halfway, he saw Tony's murderous after looking at him, he hastily closed his mouth, revealing a naive smile. "Ha ha." Leo smiled happily. Leo had a lot of contact with Tony's beautiful assistant. She is a shrewd and meticulous woman. It's hard to imagine that Tony, a life idiot, would be without Pepper and Potts. What will become of Pepper's woman's care? It's worth mentioning that Tony has always had a strange feeling for this assistant, even if Tony hasn't noticed it yet. "Hey, dude, I'm going to trouble you. My little beauty will be handed over to you today." As he said, Tony patted Whedon who was following Leo, and Whedon saw Leo nodding, before walking towards the cab. "I really envy you. There is such a dedicated bodyguard who won't tear down your station. And he can drive anything. It's not like Harpy, only fat," Tony said to Leo with some envy, a little helpless after glaring at Happy who was following behind him. He took the lead and walked towards the extremely luxurious small yacht that was less than 10 meters long. Although this small yacht is the smallest in Tony's hands, it has been refitted by himself, so in terms of speed, it is definitely the fastest of its kind. Under the driving of Whedon, after sailing on the sea for less than an hour, Leo and his party moved away from the coastline. After the yacht stopped, the four of them faced the sea wind and hung bait on the hook, flung into the sea, and then the four of them slowly calmed down, waiting for the moment when the fish took the bait. After being quiet for less than 3 minutes, Tony, who felt a little boring, felt that it was necessary to add some prizes to stimulate his competitive spirit, so he said to Leo, "Leo, do you want to compare? Whoever loses will, whoever wins eats a giant cheeseburger." Hearing this, Leo's keen senses had already sensed that some fish started to bite his hook, and the corner of Leo's mouth twitched. "Yes." "Hey, then you're doomed. I'm a master at fishing." Tony raised his beard proudly. "Really?" Leo smiled lightly, and directly threw the fish that had bitten the hook and was still struggling. "Hey, you're so lucky." Tony froze for a moment, and finally calmed down. Facts have proved that Tony is not lying. He is indeed a good fisherman, especially after he calmed down. The fish were biting his hook, but Leo did not look anxious, because just now he found a bluefin tuna that was enough to win the competition. Although it was only over 1 meter long and not up to the standard size of 2 meters for a bluefin tuna, it also gave Tony enough pressure. Leo and Tony's fish had never been broken, and Whedon would pull a hook or two from time to time, but Happy, who was beside Whedon, looked depressed. "Why can't I catch any of them?" Happy murmured in a low voice. After cutting the tangled fishing line for the nth time, he hung up the fishing line again and threw it into the sea. After a while, Happy's body shook, and he was almost pulled directly into the water by the sudden force. Fortunately, Whedon beside him caught him in time. After he stabilized his body, Happy opened his mouth and laughed loudly. "Come, ha ha, I seem to have caught a big guy." Hearing the sound, Leo and Tony looked over together, and seeing Happy, whose face was flushed with the help of Whedon, and who hadn't pulled the big fish up yet, a hint of curiosity appeared on his face. "Come on, Happy, help me win Leo, I'll give you a vacation," Tony shouted loudly. Just as Tony shouted, the still struggling fish suddenly became quiet. After a few seconds passed, it struggled suddenly, and then the sudden force shook the whole yacht, and the poor fish Harpy was pulled directly from the yacht into the water. "Help!" Happy yelled for help, but the hand holding the fishing rod did not relax, and then there was a wave of waves, and Happy rose and fell with the waves on the sea like a rubber ball. "Leo!" Tony yelled in a panic. Seeing this, Leo didn't care about revealing his abilities. After all, it would be dangerous for Happy to go on like this. As for Happy, he would know that he has mutant abilities. Leo figured Tony would take care of it for him. Leo directly dragged Happy with his mind power, and when he was about to use his mind power to rescue him, Happy grabbed the fishing rod with a blushing face and shouted, "Get my big fish up too, I want to take a vacation." "How long has it been since you gave poor Happy a vacation?" I teased Tony, and in Tony's awkward smile, the power of thought was activated, directly imprisoning the struggling big fish, and after rescuing Happy, pulled the big fish down deck. Looking at the human head on the fish and the familiar face, Leo praised that it was indeed a big fish, and at the same time, he called out with a hint of doubt, "Mr. Kelly." Congressman Kelly is a senator who has no sympathy for the mutant group, and is a staunch promoter of the mutant registration bill. This is a senator who has a high reputation among some extreme groups that oppose mutants, and of course all mutants one of the most hated people. Of course Emma is no exception, so even Leo doesn't like this guy. Rep. Kelly. Tony had also heard about this guy. After all, this guy's recent exposure rate is quite high, but the latest report was that he was missing. "Are you a mutant?" Looking at the fish-like respiratory system on Kelly's back full of wounds, Leo raised his eyebrows and asked. "No, I'm human. I'm not a mutant. I'm not." Looking at the weird eyes of Leo and the others, Mr. Kelly retorted loudly, but at this time his image like a fish monster was really not convincing force. As Congressman Kelly struggled, the fishing line wrapped around him became tighter and tighter. In pain, he shouted loudly, "Untie this fishing line." "You won, Tony. This is the biggest fish today," Leo said helplessly, and then motioned Whedon to cut those fishing lines. "Ha ha," Tony smiled smugly, not caring at all about Congressman Kelly's face turning purple when he heard that he was a bet. As the fishing line was cut, the abnormality on Mr. Kelly disappeared, and he returned to his human form. Looking at Mr. Kelly standing naked on the deck with a dead gray face, Tony said with a look of disgust, "Harry, find him something to cover." "Okay, Mr. Stark," Happy responded, walked to the cabin, took out a blanket and threw it over. After taking the blanket and wrapping himself up, Congressman Kelly, whose expression improved slightly, made a request to Tony and Leo. Yes, it was a request. After all, Leo and Tony's identities as the masters of the big consortium were there. Whether it's Leo, Tony, or even Osborne Enterprises, they all funded a few, so even if he was laughed at by Tony and Leo just now, he didn't refute. Of course he doesn't have the strength to refute now, because now his body is slowly becoming weak, and he can even feel that his vitality is slowly draining away. So he needs to receive treatment, for his own life. What is it to ask for your own life? Please take me to X Academy, I need treatment. Ha, why, although you may be a fish, it's a pity that you are not a mermaid. Tony smiled nonchalantly. No, you can't do this. Magneto made me look like this. X Academy is my last hope. Help me, take me to X Academy. Senator Kelly begged. Hearing the words Magneto, Leo's heart trembled. He stopped Tony's poisonous tongue, and agreed. Just now, Senator Kelly didn't notice the relationship between Leo's use of mutant powers to catch them, so Leo was also happy that there was only one person who knew about his abilities. After all, Senator Kelly was not as reliable as Tony's bodyguard. Happy, therefore, Leo still chose to use transportation to go to X Academy, so he said, "Witten, drive the boat back." Witten nodded, and walked towards the cab without saying a word, and after seeing the serious look on Leo's face, Tony also realized the seriousness of the matter, and calmed down rarely. Just when Leo and his party drove the yacht back to the coast, the figure of Leo appeared in X Academy. This Leo walked to the depths of X Academy with ease, and then walked to a door with pupil certification marked with at the metal door of the X logo. The pupils changed slightly to pass the authentication, and then the door slowly opened, and at the same time a mechanical voice came out, "Welcome to Professor X." Looking at the scene inside, it is the brainwave room of X Academy. Seeing this Leo smiled slightly, and finally changed back to his original face. It was Mystique who came out to perform the task, swaying her waist. After filling in the brainwave device that Magneto gave her, which can make the user unconscious, she said with a trace of apology, "Charles, in order to prevent you from hindering us, I can only let you sleep." After finishing speaking, he changed into Leo again and walked towards the school playground. Standing on the playground, after transforming into Leo, Mystique asked a mutant child to bring a message to the little rascal who was in class, and waited quietly with a satisfied expression on her face. After a while, the face was happy that the little rascal appeared in front of her eyes. "Here comes the little sheep." With a whisper, Mystique waved to the little rascal who was running. Leo, looking at the figure standing on the edge of the playground, little Naughty shouted happily. "Ha ha, you're here, little rascal." Looking at the little rascal running towards him, the corner of Leo's mouth slightly twitched. As soon as he heard that Leo was looking for him, he hurriedly asked for leave from Aurora, who was in class. Asked, "What's the matter?" Looking at the little rascal in front of her, Mystique, who appeared in the image of Leo, had an evil thought in her heart, and then an ambiguous smile appeared on the corner of her mouth, and she put her face in front of the little rascal, waiting for the little rascal's face to turn red. After that, as if water was about to drip out, he said softly, "Take you to a good place." Okay. The little rascal, who was watched by the Mystique transformed into Leo, whose heart was pounding, responded in a low voice, followed behind Leo, and disappeared into X Academy. At this time, as soon as Tony came off the yacht, Leo hurried to X Academy with Senator Kelly. As for Tony, Leo didn't let him follow him. After all, he was an ordinary person, even though Tony was very interested in it. Looking at Congressman Kelly, who was sitting in the back seat like a leaky bag that was constantly seeping water, Leo frowned slightly and asked, "Are you okay?" "Hurry up, please," Senator Kelly said weakly with an ugly smile. Seeing this, Leo said to Whedon, who was driving, "Whedon, hurry up." "Okay," Whedon responded, and in an instant, the speed of the car under him was increased to the extreme, and then rushed to X Academy when the sky was getting dark. After the car stopped, looking at Congressman Kelly, who seemed to have lost his bones and couldn't even stand up, Leo signaled Whedon to carry him on his back, and then led Whedon to take Mr. Kelly to the medical room of X Academy, where he waited. After putting Mr. Kelly on the medical bed, he said to Mr. Kelly, "I'm going to find Professor X." Then Leo signaled Whedon to be optimistic about him, and after walking out of the medical room, the teleportation disappeared. If it is normal, this Kelly representative will definitely find some abnormalities, such as why Leo is so familiar with X Academy. But he doesn't have that kind of thought now, because he has lost control of his body. He feels like he is going to die, and it is true. After Leo told Professor X about Congressman Kelly, the main force of Academy X came to the medical room. After Chin gave Congressman Kelly an urgent but meticulous examination, the group of people, under Chin's signal, out of the medical room. His genes have completely collapsed. He is hopeless. Chin, who had finished the examination of Congressman Kelly, said to Professor X with a look of regret. After hearing this, Professor X nodded heavily, and asked Leo. He said it was made by Magneto. Yes, Leo nodded in affirmation. After getting Leo's affirmation, Professor X frowned. He needed to know more details. Thinking of this, Professor X went back to the medical room again, and said gently to Congressman Kelly with a look of despair, "Relax. Save me. Can you save me, Professor X?" Perhaps feeling the fact that he was going to die, Congressman Kelly tried to get some comfort from Professor X. Looking at this dying man, a look of unbearableness flashed in Professor X's eyes, and he used his ability to comfort Senator Kelly. After he calmed down, Professor X closed his eyes and checked the memory in his mind. The scene when he was transformed by Magneto. After a while, Professor X opened his eyes, and after using his abilities to make Senator Kelly fall asleep, he thanked Leo and said, "Thank you for letting Logan remind me of the little naughty thing. Leo, I finally know why did Magneto go to find Little Rascal." Hearing Professor X's words, Leo was slightly taken aback, waiting for Professor X's next words. "I see from his memory that his mutation ability is obtained through the radiation emitted by a magnetic energy enhancement instrument, and that instrument needs the ability of Magneto to operate." Speaking of this, Professor X suddenly after a pause, he said with a solemn face, "That instrument consumes a lot of energy for Magneto, and overuse may even cause him to lose his life. That's why he needs the Little Rascal, to give his own ability to the Little Rascal, and let the Little Rascal die for him." After saying this, Logan looked angry. "Fortunately, Rascal is in Academy X. Fortunately, Little Rascal went out with you this afternoon." As soon as Logan finished speaking, Leo and Aurora spoke together, and after the two looked at each other in surprise, Aurora said in surprise, "Didn't you send someone to call Little Rascal this afternoon?" "I want to find her, but call her directly." After Leo explained, he looked thoughtful, and then said together with Professor X, "Mystique." Hearing Mystique's name, everyone present came to their senses, especially Aurora, who blamed himself. "I was negligent." "It's not your fault," Chin gently comforted her friend. "We must not let Magneto harm that child. I'll use the brainwave device to search for their whereabouts," Professor X said solemnly, then turned the wheelchair under him, and led Logan and his party out of the medical room. Just after a group of people stepped out of the door of the medical room, an extremely weak voice reached Leo's ears, and then Leo's footsteps paused before returning to the medical room. "Mr. Leo." Senator Kelly showed a fleeting smile when he saw Leo coming in. Looking at the distorted Senator Kelly lying on the medical bed, Leo couldn't help but feel a sense of depression, and when he was about to speak, Senator Kelly said in a faint tone, "Fortunately, it's you, Leo Mr. Ow, hee, I don't want to be surrounded by mutants that I loathe and guard against all my life." Hearing this, Leo was stunned for a moment, looked at the person who was waiting for the imminent death, and said, "Did you know? In fact, they are most afraid of human beings." "Ha, really? That's really an honor." Hearing Leo's words, a strange light appeared on Kelly's face, as if he was satisfied with being feared by mutants, and then he showed a bitter smile to Leo. With a smile, his body slowly swelled, and then he said in a word, they are afraid, there is one less human being." As soon as the words fell, like a jellyfish, the whole body suddenly turned into a mass of water stains, dripping down from the medical bed. Looking at the water stains on the ground, Leo was stunned. For this congressman who refused to admit that he was already a mutant until the last second before his death, Leo suddenly had a little respect, even though he was hateful among mutants. However, from his standpoint, for those humans who were harmed by mutants whether intentionally or unintentionally, he is not wrong at all. He is also fighting for his own race, and he is also trying to prevent his people from being killed. Mutants just hurt. If the mutant group is a disadvantaged group compared to the entire human society, then for those ordinary humans who have mastered powerful power and cannot fight against mutants at all, are they not a disadvantaged group? In the final analysis, it is still a matter of position. Witten, collect this water. No matter what, this is his body. For the dead, Leo always retains the minimum respect, and tells Witten, who has been following him after a while. Leo walked towards the brainwave room, but on the way to the brainwave room, Leo couldn't help guessing Magneto's intentions for doing this. "I hope that Dr. X can find Little Rascal. Tell me, what is Magneto's plan to use that instrument to turn all human beings into this kind of mutants?" No, regardless of whether the instrument has such a large radiation range, even if it is that the energy consumption of the magnetic energy booster, from the fact that he lost half his life by irradiating only one Congressman Kelly last time, is beyond what he or the little rascal who accepts his ability can afford. Since the range is not enough, then it is only within a limited radiation range to expand the radiation impact. In this case, thinking of this, Leo's eyes lit up, and Leo slowly said the answer, the summit of the heads of state. Professor. Just when Leo was about to tell Professor X the answer he thought of, a series of shocking voices came from the brain-wave room not far away. With the thought, he rushed in, and then saw the professor who had lost consciousness. Looking at Logan, who was the calmest among all, Leo asked, "Logan, what's going on?" Professor X was assassinated. He passed out as soon as he used the brainwave device. Logan explained in a cold voice. Looking at Aurora, Chin and Scott, who were in a panic, Leo, who was very dissatisfied with their flustered performance, said helplessly, "Take Professor X back to the medical room first. What Magneto will do next, I have some clues about the matter, but I still need to confirm it." Hearing Leo's words, the three barely suppressed the panic in their hearts, and led the unconscious Professor X out of the brain-wave room. He gestured to Logan, who was still standing beside him, to wait a moment, and then, under Logan's puzzled eyes, Leo took out his mobile phone. Because of the Lizard Man incident last time, Tony gave Leo the authorization, so it is much more convenient for Leo to contact Jarvis now. Without contacting Tony, he can directly contact Jarvis with his mobile phone. "Hello, Mr. Leo." After the communication was connected, Jarvis' voice came out. "Jarvis, help me find out what's unusual near Ellis Island where the Heads of State Summit is held tonight." "Good, sir." After just a few breaths, Jarvis' voice sounded again. "Sir, there is nothing unusual near Ellis Island." "Not on Ellis Island." Leo frowned, and continued to ask Jarvis while thinking about it. "Then, have you checked the area near Ellis Island for any abnormalities?" Hearing Leo's order, Jarvis searched a bit, and a stereoscopic image indicating the problem appeared on Leo's mobile phone, and then Jarvis said, "Sir, the monitoring facilities near Liberty Island have been interfered with. Mark of. I found you, Magneto," Leo secretly said, confirming his conjecture. After hanging up the communication, he said to Logan, who was still puzzled, "Magneto's goal should be the summit of heads of state. If you guess wrong, he should be on Liberty Island now." "You mean, he wants to use a magnetic booster to turn all the heads of state attending the meeting into mutants? He's such a lunatic." Logan was speechless at Magneto's crazy idea. "It should be like this. So Liberty Island, which is the closest to Ellis Island, is the best place he chose to release radiation. Coupled with the fact that I just implemented Liberty Island's surveillance interference, it is now basically certain that Magneto is in Liberty. The island is right." Hearing Leo's words, Logan became impatient, because the summit meeting of heads of state was about to be held. "Leo, let's go now. Go to Scott and the others." Leo nodded, and teleported Logan to the medical room. After Leo briefly explained his guess to the three of them, he left Chin to take care of Dr. X. Leo took the three of them and teleported directly to Liberty Island. Liberty Island, also known as Statue of Liberty Island, is called so because of the Statue of Liberty holding the torch, which symbolizes the bronze statue of breaking free from the shackles of democracy and freedom. As soon as Leo and his party appeared, Logan's keen sense of smell like a wild beast smelled the smell of the little naughty, and then he moved his nose a few times, looked at the Statue of Liberty holding the torch, and said affirmatively, "The little naughty smell comes from there." Hearing this, Leo nodded, and directly took the three of them to the hall at the base of the Statue of Liberty, but he didn't want to. As soon as he appeared, he saw Magneto and the man standing behind him. Mystique, Saber-Toothed Tiger, Meatball and Toad. Seeing Magneto's smile with everything under control, Leo wanted to take Logan and the others to teleport away, but he didn't want the teleportation to fail. Apparently Magneto is disturbing the surrounding space with magnetism. "Welcome to witness the miracle." Seeing Leo's astonished expression, Magneto smiled in satisfaction and clapped his palms. Immediately when Leo and his party were about to flee from the spot, a large number of thunderstorms rose under Leo's feet. The silver metal transformed into a huge metal cage made of metal, directly trapping them inside. "Roar!" Seeing this, Logan roared, Edmund stretched out his sharp claws, and slashed at the metal pillar that turned into a cage. But before the claws touched the metal cage, Magneto's eyes were fixed, like he directly controlled Logan like a doll, and said with a chuckle, "You're still just as stupid." Looking at Magneto, who didn't take his group seriously at all, Leo had a thought, and with Leo's anger, he charged directly at Magneto, but Magneto, who had been prepared for a long time, directly manipulated the metal in his cast. A metal wall was formed to block Leo's thoughts, and at the same time, the metal cage controlled by magnetism slowly changed. Strips of metal like soft ropes were entwined towards Leo and the others under the manipulation of Magneto, and go. Ha! Seeing this, Leo sneered coldly. Following Leo's thought, a gorgeous knife shadow bloomed in Leo's hand, and after flashing through the cage very quickly, it cut open the cage, and then the power of thought was like a balloon with such a violent explosion. After flying the metal, the 4 people rushed out of the base hall wrapped in thoughts. Following Leo's figure, Magneto walked out of the hall at a leisurely pace. Seeing the inexplicably appearing samurai sword in Leo's hand, Magneto was surprised and asked, "What kind of sword is this?" "Not controlled by my magnetism." Seeing this, Leo flicked the Zanpakuto lightly in his hand, smiled coldly, and a silver electric glow appeared on the Zanpakuto, and then under Leo's control, it turned into a silver sword glow composed of lightning. Shooting towards Magneto, slashed away, and said softly, "Zanpakuto." Using magnetic force to control his body to move sideways to avoid the silver blade glow, Magneto showed admiration on his face. "Your ability is getting stronger. I appreciate you more and more. Do you want to join me? Brotherhood. Let me be the boss. I can think about it." Leo showed a sarcasm smile, but he didn't want Magneto to say without thinking after hearing his words, "I can let you inherit mine location." Hearing this, Leo was taken aback, looked at the sincere Magneto, and said without any hesitation, "You and I have different ideas." Hearing this, Magneto's face froze, and a look of indifference emerged, and then his toes slowly left the ground, controlling the metal that had transformed into silver water to float around his body, and said to Leo with strong pressure, "Don't challenge my patience, young man." Hearing this, Leo sneered, and gently pushed Logan, Aurora, and Scott away from him with his thoughts, hooked his fingers at Magneto, and said with a hint of fighting spirit, "Then come, let's fight." Then, with a flash of his body, he flew directly into midair with an electric glow. Seeing this, Magneto glanced at Mystique and her party guarding the entrance of the Statue of Liberty with his sharp eyes, and said indifferently, "You look after that child. I'll teach you a lesson, this young man who doesn't know what to do." After finishing speaking, it also rose into the air. Leo faced Magneto, and the remaining members of the fraternity naturally had to be handed over to Logan and the 3. Seeing that the opposite party had one more combat power than himself, Scott, who was born with a rigorous personality, frowned slightly, and planned to make a good plan, but at this moment, Logan's roar was heard. "Victor!" Looking at the saber-toothed tiger standing with Mystique, Logan, who had recovered his memory, roared angrily, and rushed towards Victor with a look of madness. Logan. He licked his mouth, pinched the sharp claws that had grown black nails, and with the same bloodthirsty eyes, he caught Logan's sharp claws with a pounce, and then the two rolled together. Seeing this, Scott and Aurora looked at each other helplessly and then rushed towards the remaining members of the fraternity. The battle was imminent. In the midair of Liberty Island, Leo and Magneto faced each other from a distance, and silver electric lights appeared on the surface of Leo's body, as dazzling as wearing a battle suit made of lightning. Metal surround, magnetic body protection. Magneto has an indifferent face. He appreciates Leo, and appreciates it very much, but Leo has repeatedly provoked him, and it is still at a critical juncture about the future of mutants blocking him. This kind of behavior is obviously beyond his tolerance, and he gradually loses his patience. Over the brightly lit sky of New York City, Magneto reprimanded loudly like an emperor stepping on the stars, "Why stop me from turning them into mutants? You are blocking the future of mutants." "The future," Leo sneered, pointed the Zanpakuto in his hand at the godlike Magneto and said, "If the future you're talking about is that Senator Kelly. That's really ridiculous." "Oh, you saw him. Then he ran so far." Magneto's eyes moved, and the flowing metal around his body stopped. Containing a hint of chill, Leo said angrily, "Just half an hour ago, he turned into a ball of water stains in front of me." "Ha, that's really pitiful. But after all, the mutation succeeded. If you activate that device today, you won't be the only one who died." Those who receive the radiation will die. So what? Those humble and cowardly humans, do they have anything to do with me? Magneto's tone was flat, and his eyes didn't have any waves, but his words stirred up Leo's anger like a storm. Dazzling silver lightning bolts gushed out of Leo's hands, like silver chains, rushing towards Magneto. Magneto just waved his arm lightly, and the metal surrounding him was like a circle. Like a shield, standing in front of him, like a boulder resisting the impact of the water flow. It was relaxed and comfortable, but the next moment, Magneto's indifferent eyes changed slightly, because Leo, who was shining with electric lights, used extremely fast the speed has rushed to his back. Looking at Magneto with his back wide open, Leo didn't hesitate, and slashed down with the sword in his hand, but the next moment, silver metal blocked Magneto's back. Leo sneered at this, although Leo hasn't mastered the true power of this Zanpakuto, but in terms of sharpness, it is no less than that of adamantium alloy. Sparks continued to slash at Magneto at the same time. Hee. Magneto smiled lightly, and then saw that the surface of the Zanpakutana that had cut metal was covered with an imperceptible layer of metal, and then Magneto used this to control Leo's Zanpaku knife. Awesome, Leo praised, and then saw the silver metal needles made of metal shoot towards Leo under the control of Magneto. Psyche surged out to block the dense metal needles. Although under the continuous attack of these metals, the psychic wall only blocked a blink of an eye, but it was enough for Leo to make the Zanpakuto disappear and break free from the shackles of magnetic force to avoid it. Opened. Leo's body flickered with electric light, his speed soared, and he jumped back, looking at Magneto who was still in place. Leo snapped his fingers, a trace of electric light flashed between Leo's fingers, and the next moment, a bucket-thick lightning appeared inexplicably from the sky, like an angry god, blasting towards Magneto with a scorching smell. The speed at which lightning penetrates the air is enough to make anyone despair, but Magneto is Magneto after all, and he was prepared for Leo's attack. The moment the lightning fell, the metal surrounding him emitted a large amount of magnetic force, then the falling lightning directly avoided Magneto, who was surrounded by metal, and rushed into the metal. Looking at Magneto standing with his hands behind his back, Leo was stunned for a moment, then blurted out, "Use a magnetic field to attract current." Electromagnetic principle. This is science. Magneto controlled the metal around him with a proud face. You don't go to teach, why don't you study physics well? Leo complained. Looking at Magneto's face, he remembered the physics teacher who didn't pass the exam before, regardless, and once again controlled the lightning bolts to strike Magneto, muttered in his mouth, "I want you to fail me." At this time, because of the battle between Leo and Magneto, it attracted the attention of a lot of people, especially the attention of the heads of state who were meeting at the summit of heads of state. Looking at the thunder and lightning constantly falling in the sky, some religious heads of state made the cross on his chest, meditated on God's blessing, and even began to wonder if there was something unclean here. Otherwise, why would the lightning keep falling in one place? Seeing this, the President of the United States wiped the sweat from his forehead and whispered to the Secretary General who was following him, "Go and find out what's going on." Hearing this, the Secretary General nodded and left in a hurry. That's enough. Looking at Leo who was still full of feelings, Magneto, who had been hacked for a long time as a living target, was full of anger. Although these lightning bolts couldn't hurt him, Leo's relaxed expression was still there. It's really annoying. Hearing this, Leo stopped his hands, not because of Magneto's roar, but because of a man's voice that sounded like he was begging for a beating from his mobile phone in his pocket. "Leo, Rhodes wants me to invite you to the awards show in 3 days. He said that he has some things to discuss with you, personal suggestions. It's really boring, you don't need to attend." Hearing Tony's words, Leo was speechless. He avoided the metal balls that shuttled in the air and attacked him, and controlled the thunderbolt to form flashing lightning javelins in front of him. While shooting at Magneto, he yelled at the phone, "Tony! You fool! Hacked my phone again!" Hearing Leo's roar, Tony on the other end of the phone felt something was wrong, rubbed his buzzing ears, and ordered Jarvis, "Call out the image of where Leo is now." Okay, Mr. Stark. As soon as Jarvis finished speaking, the scene of the battle between Leo and Magneto appeared in front of Tony. Tony was stunned for a moment, and then said excitedly, "What is this?" "Lightning Boy Leo Austrian vs. Evil. Ah, old man." Then he trotted and took a big can of beer, took a big gulp, sat down happily, and watched the live broadcast. At this time, Magneto, who was fighting with Leo, frowned, because he found helicopters flying over, apparently an army sent by humans after discovering the anomaly. Too much time wasted on this kid. When this thought came to his mind, Magneto's last bit of patience was finally exhausted, and then a sense of tyranny rose up, facing the torch-holding figure on Liberty Island under his feet. The Statue of Liberty stretched out her hand, and used magnetic force to cut off the arm of the goddess with the naughty presence. After putting it on the ground, she directly controlled the one-armed Statue of Liberty and raised it into the air. She looked at Leo with disdainful eyes, then he said coldly, "Don't blame me if you die." Similarly, after feeling the large amount of electrical energy remaining in the space around his body due to his continuous summoning of thunder and lightning, Leo smiled slightly, clenched the Zanpakuto with both hands, and slowly raised it between his eyebrows, and then his dark blue eyes flickered. There was a dazzling electric glow. The one-armed Statue of Liberty flew into the air. Those soldiers who came to check the situation because of the order thought they were dazzled when they saw this scene, and rubbed their eyes fiercely, until their eyes were almost swollen from rubbing, but they still didn't notice any changes. What's going on here? The Statue of Liberty has come back to life. The pilot operating the helicopter screamed again and again, making the Secretary General's complexion instantly dark while sitting on the helicopter, while the Secretary General, who had fairly good eyesight, he noticed the two figures floating in the air, and immediately called out in disbelief, "Mutants!" Looking at the flying helicopter, Magneto in the black night sky didn't care at all. Such a steel weapon was meaningless in front of him. What made him care was Leo, who was opposite him. On the other hand, Leo frowned when he saw the helicopter approaching, and shouted loudly, "Get out of here quickly, Magneto is here." Hearing Leo's warning, the helicopter carrying the Secretary General paused, and then the obese Secretary General took a closer look and finally saw Magneto clearly surrounded by metal. Having seen Magneto's information, he naturally knew the horror of Magneto, and then a pair of small round eyes showed fear, and at the same time as notifying everyone to retreat, his fat face trembled with fear, and his fat hands became even more frightening. It was holding the driver's arm tightly, shouting, "Go! That's really Magneto." Looking at the helicopters slowly spreading around, Magneto smiled coldly and said, "Do you care about the life and death of those bugs?" Hearing this, Leo didn't answer, because the Statue of Liberty controlled by Magneto was slowly changing. It was stretched by Magneto like noodles, and after bending and twisting, it turned into a hand. There is a meter-long spear. Magneto landed on the spear lightly, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and said to Leo, "This is the last chance, leave quickly." "Ha, this is your last chance." In response, Leo controlled the remaining electrical energy in the air, and condensed it towards the Zanpakuto in his hand. While the Zanpakutana in his hand became brilliant and dazzling, Leo injected the electrical energy in his body into it, and then the Zon Soul Saber in his hand emitted a dazzling light, as dazzling as a sun in the sky. At this moment, the Secretary General, who had been far away, looked at the Statue of Liberty, which had turned into a spear, with a demented expression on his face. Was the goddess who had witnessed the growth of New York destroyed just like that? Then he gritted his teeth and said, "This Magneto." Hearing the Secretary General's words, the pilot of the helicopter put his hand on the button for launching the missile, and said frankly, "Are you going to kill Magneto?" "Kill, kill, kill, kill your head. If you want to kill, you will kill it. Get out of here quickly, this battle is not for us to intervene." He slapped the driver's head fiercely, and the Secretary General yelled with stubborn. Seeing Leo's attack, Magneto yelled angrily. With a huge impact, the spear under his feet rushed towards Leo like a spear of judgment in the hands of a god with the speed of bursting the air. "Go!" Looking at the spear less than 10 meters away from him, Leo's eyes shone with confidence, and the Zanpakuto in his hand, with electric snakes dancing wildly, slashed down on the spear fiercely. For a moment, an arc-shaped light made of silver lightning collided with the tip of the spear with a roaring sound of thunder, and then directly cut into the spear with the high-temperature light of the lightning. In the middle, it cut directly along the spear body. Why can't it absorb it? Magneto, who was looking at the sword light that split the spear body, tried to use the magnetic metal to absorb the lightning again, was surprised, and then saw the sword light cut the spear and rushed towards him at that time. he controlled the metal river around him to turn into a metal wall to block in front of him, but he only slightly blocked the sword glow, and the next moment, the sword glow continued to cut at him. Magneto didn't dare to hesitate. He controlled the steel spear that had been cut in half, and appeared in front of him, and then a steel wall with a thickness of more than 10 meters blocked him. This is not over, and I still feel the danger. Magneto stretched out his palm towards the Liberty Island under his feet, and then all the metal on the island shot up into the sky, and was cast into a metal wall by Magneto. At the same time, the metal elements contained in the soil on the island were also destroyed. Magneto extracted it with his ability, and after the acres of Liberty Island under his feet had dropped by a full meter, the metal wall in front of him had already been thickened to a terrifying thickness of 100 meters. Boom! With the lightning that exploded, the knife light cut a huge hole in the metal wall, and then, like rushing into the body of a giant steel beast, it directly tore more than metal wall, and then slowed down. Slowly disappear. Satisfied with his results, Leo took a slightly tired breath, waved the Zanpakuto, and smiled slightly, knowing that Magneto just wanted to use the magnetic field to absorb the light of his lightning sword. Leo knew very well, but what Magneto doesn't know is that the lightning blade glow that was cut by Zanpakuto this time is no longer pure lightning. If you want to describe it, it is that the thunder and lightning that attacked Magneto before is the thunder and lightning of nature, but the lightning blade light that Zanpakuto cut out is powered by lightning, and the power of death that contains the lightning attribute has been separated. The category of natural lightning. It really impresses me. Magneto's tone was faint, but Leo could feel the anger contained in it. Thinking about it, a person who can be called the king in the world of mutants was almost beaten by a young man. How can this not make Magneto angry? At this time, following Magneto's words, the metal wall in front of Magneto disintegrated like sand, and then it seemed to be blown by the wind, hovering continuously, and then it was only a few breaths, a tornado storm with a diameter of more than meters made of metal actually formed, and then swept towards Leo with the power of destroying the earth. When the metal storm hit, Leo keenly discovered that the metal particles that make up the metal storm were flat in shape with extremely smooth edges, like tiny blades. Obviously, the lethality of this metal storm was far more powerful than it looked powerful. But Leo didn't retreat. Instead, a lot of lightning power gushed out of his body, and then under Leo's call, a lot of thunderclouds appeared above Leo's head, and then under Leo's control, lightning bolts shot one after another, smashed towards the metal storm like continuous raindrops. Is this still a human? Tony, who was drinking beer and watching the live show, saw this scene with a demented expression on his face. Those who had the same expression as Tony were the heads of state who participated in the Summit of Heads of State. They even feel that coming to this stupid meeting today is the biggest mistake in their lives. As the war between Leo and Magneto heated up, the commotion became louder and louder. Correspondingly, more and more ordinary people noticed the war in midair. Although the battle between Leo and Magneto, the war was only in the sky above Liberty Island, but the thunder and lightning across the sky and the metal storm rolling in the sky were too eye-catching, but fortunately, these horrific attacks did not appear in the densely populated areas of New York, urban area. After the obese Secretary General asked the driver to stay away from the terrifying battlefield again, he reported the situation on the scene to the president at the Heads of State Summit. After hearing the word Magneto, the poor president broke into cold sweat. It flowed down, especially after hearing that Magneto turned the Statue of Liberty into a spear. His face turned pale. He seemed to have foreseen the intense emotions of the people after they found out that the Statue of Liberty was missing tomorrow. Lock it up. No one can get close. Reluctantly issued an order. The president, whose face was flushed because of the successful summit meeting of heads of state, now seemed to be suffering from an incurable disease. Not a trace of blood. After receiving the order from the president, the Secretary General issued orders one by one, with Liberty Island as the center, sealing off all nearby areas. On Liberty Island, Logan and his party had also stopped fighting. Watching the battle in the air, they were amazed by Leo's terrifying fighting power, and at the same time looked warily at the members of the Brotherhood on the opposite side. Mystique shook the hand that was stunned by Aurora, and after seeing the fear on the faces of other fraternity members, she sighed. Oh. This kid is so powerful. Are you okay, Ruiwin, my old friend? At this moment, a gentle voice sounded in Mystique's mind. Hearing this voice, Mystique shook her body, knowing that when this voice appeared, their plan today would have no possibility of success, and then a wry smile appeared on her face. Charles, are you awake? Stop, Professor X said to Mystique in a commanding tone, and then controlled Mystique, who was still about to speak. Apparently, Professor X also knew that now was not the time to reminisce. After Professor X controlled the remaining members of the fraternity, Logan and his party naturally heard Professor X's instructions in their minds, and then rushed directly to the place where the little rascal was bound, with a look of joy on their faces. At the bronze arm. Anyway, the current Statue of Liberty only has stumps left, so Logan didn't hesitate at all, and directly cut a hole with his sharp Edmund claws, and rescued the little rascal with tears on his face. Teacher, little rascal cried out excitedly when he saw the X-Men. It's all right, Aurora comforted, and when he wanted to wipe away the tears on little Naughty's face, he suddenly remembered little Naughty's ability, and then his raised hand froze in the air, with a hint of embarrassment on his face. Fortunately, at this time, the little rascal was attracted by the battle above his head. Looking at the doomsday scene intertwined with lightning and metal storms above his head, the little rascal asked curiously while being afraid, "Is that fighting?" It's Leo and Magneto," Logan replied, with worried eyes. After all, Leo's opponent is Magneto, who has been rampant for decades. Get out of here, X-Men. Leo and Magneto had no reason to fight after the little rascal was rescued, so after hearing Professor X's words, Logan and his party did not hesitate, and went directly to Professor X under the guidance of the teacher. They found Chin, who came to pick them up, and after boarding the Blackbird fighter plane of X Academy, they disappeared amidst the roar. As Leo continued to use his abilities, he resisted the attack of Magneto, and his grasp of his abilities became stronger and stronger. This is the first time his abilities have been upgraded to level 4, and he has such a hearty battle. And what made Leo feel a little excited was that when his ability was pushed to the limit, he had some weak connection with the Zanpakuto in his hand. However, Magneto was in an extremely bad mood at this time, and his eyes were blazing, because he had just received a communication from Mystique. Charles is awake, the little rascal has been rescued. Hearing this, Magneto lost his leisurely posture before the battle. He looked at Leo opposite him, like a god who had been cut down by Leo, and roared loudly with the anger that can only appear on mortals, "You broke my big business." Hee. Leo laughed lightly. He, who was also summoned by Professor X, was in a very happy mood. He raised his eyelids and looked at the angry Magneto. He had already achieved the purpose of this operation, and his body flashed with lightning. After exiting the battlefield gracefully, the teleportation disappeared immediately. Now that Leo has withdrawn from the battle, Magneto, who has lost the reason to fight, does not need to manipulate the astonishing number of metal particles, so when those metal particles lose the control of Magneto and fall directly from the sky, the entire Liberty Island surrounding it was as if heavy black rain had fallen in the space, and in an instant, a thick layer of metal was laid on the ground of Liberty Island. Looking at the metal particles like fine sand under his feet, the obese Secretary General absent-mindedly grabbed a handful of metal gravel and murmured, "Is this the Statue of Liberty?" Looking at Magneto and his party who disappeared out of sight, the Secretary General shook the fat on his face and said angrily, "Mutants." With a look of exhaustion on his face, Leo teleported to Academy X, which was even earlier than Logan and the others. When he saw the same exhausted Dr. X at the door of the brainwave room, he smiled and said with concern, "You're the body." Fortunately, it only takes a while to recover, but for the brainwave device, it can no longer be used during this period of time. While talking, Professor X pinched his swollen forehead, trying to relieve the discomfort, and then said to Leo, "Would you like a cup of tea?" Okay. It was estimated that there would be a while before Logan and the others came back. Leo agreed and helped Professor X push the wheelchair. After pushing Professor X to his office and making a cup of tea for the two, Leo sat on the sofa, closed his eyes because of exhaustion, and then contacted the system. Congratulations to the host for completing the mission. Crisis Rescuer, second time. Mission statement. The Overlord played an important role in this crisis. Fixed rewards. 1 lottery draw. Other rewards. 6,000 exchange points. Quote. 6,000 points. It's so much more than last time. Looking at this, Leo took a breath and forced himself to be shocked. In New York City, if all the nearly all heads of state at the summit meeting die, the result, tisk tisk, will definitely lead to an all-out war between humans and mutants. Redeem point 39,810, 2 lucky draw chances. The 10th lottery draw of the welfare system plus the reward for this mission. Looking at the nearly 40,000 exchange points, Leo opened the conversation, but after seeing 2 lucky draw opportunities, he was a little hesitant whether to draw or not. Leo was deeply impressed by the things he got in the lottery last time, especially the seduction technique. Thinking about it now, Leo still couldn't help shivering. Smoke. What are you afraid of? Is there anything more terrifying than the technique of seduction? Leo slapped himself viciously in his heart, then contacted the system and started the lottery draw. Stop. Congratulations to the host for getting the item, the little mushroom picker's basket. Item introduction. This backpack is full of childhood memories. Quote. Reminisce. Reminisce about your sister. Seeing this introduction, the corners of Leo's mouth twitched. Leo was completely speechless about these strange things that appeared in the system. What needs to be explained here is that the items and props that Leo drew before are all stored in the system. As long as Leo does not choose to extract them, those drawn items will not appear, so Leo is not afraid of the drawn items. It suddenly appeared and attracted the attention of Professor X, but so far, apart from the eternal flower that has been given to Emma, that is, the Noxus guillotine sounds useful, other than that, there seems to be no what can be extracted. Continue to draw. Since it was decided to draw a lottery, Leo didn't care even if it was black. Stop. Congratulations to the host for gaining the mutant ability, telepathy, weak. Ability introduction. It can sense other people's emotions, and can mildly hypnotize the other party, but it needs physical contact to operate. Quote. Following the introduction of the system, a mysterious electric current appeared in Leo's body, and then disappeared after only one breath. Feeling this fleeting mysterious electric current, and silently comparing it with the mysterious electric current that appeared when strengthening the 4th level before, Leo complained, it's really a weak telepathy. Just when Leo had just obtained the telepathy ability, Dr. X, who was in the same room as Leo, paused while drinking tea, and looked at Leo suspiciously. There was something more before, but after seeing Leo's still closed eyes, he shook his head slightly and didn't continue to explore. After all, everyone has their own secrets. Although Leo didn't have high expectations for the ability that just appeared, after experiencing it silently, he was still a little speechless. The ability that just appeared was only a 1st level telepathy, and it had just reached the 1st level, standard. This new ability is useless. Leo sighed in his heart. Although he was prepared in his heart that he would not get any good abilities, when it actually happened, Leo still felt a little disappointed. Just when Leo was lost, Leo felt a strange and familiar existence in his body through telepathy, but now the connection between Leo and this mysterious existence is still very weak, so weak that it seems like a candle in the wind, it seems to be broken at any time. As this happiness, feeling the emotion from that mysterious existence, Leo couldn't help feeling happy in his heart, so while he was happy, Leo continued to pursue it following the faint connection, finally discovered the source of the emotions conveyed to him, Zanpakuto. A knife with its own emotions. It's alive. At this moment, Leo finally remembered what the system meant to him to have a spiritual dialogue with him when he got the soul sword. I finally have some clues about this Zanpakuto. When Leo sighed, he sent a friendly sentiment to Zanpakuto with excitement. No response. Leo was stunned for a moment, feeling the weak connection that still existed. After Leo sent a friendly emotion telepathically again, Scott's voice rang in his ear. Are you okay? Fine. Leo opened his eyes, smiled at the concerned X-Men, and then looked at Little Rascal who was hiding behind Logan with erratic eyes. Seeing this, Leo smiled slightly, and after putting a layer of protection on his hands with his thoughts, he rubbed the Little Rascal's head and said, Little Rascal. Are you all right? Leo's heart was always filled with tenderness for the girl. Thank you. I put everyone in danger. Feeling the warmth from the big hands above his head, Little Naughty couldn't help but shed tears again. It's not your fault. Thinking that Mystique was the Little Rascal who took away with her own appearance, Leo couldn't help but feel angry. At the same time, he was also moved by the Little Rascal's trust in him. Little Naughty, a trace of guilt appeared in Leo's eyes, and he asked, next time I appear in front of you, will you still follow me? Yes. As soon as Leo finished speaking, Little Naughty nodded firmly, and then, after wiping away the tears on his face, Little Naughty said, as long as it is you, no matter when you need me, I will firmly follow you. You, because you are Leo, the first person who agreed with me after I revealed my abilities. Looking at the serious face of the little rascal, Leo's heart trembled, and at the same time he felt heavy about the inexplicable trust. The corners of his mouth slightly curled up, rubbed the little rascal's head again, and said with a smile in his eyes, then you have to take good care of yourself. I will exercise my ability. I promise you, I will definitely control it. With a determined look in his eyes, Little Naughty made a promise to Leo. I believe you. Leo smiled faintly, then looked at the other X-Men, and said with a trace of fatigue in his tone, I'll go first. You are a good teacher, Leo. Just as Leo started teleporting, Professor X's words of appreciation rang in Leo's mind. We can do what we can. Leo responded, nodded to Professor X, and disappeared. The next moment, Leo appeared behind Emma, looking at Emma standing in front of the window, gazing at the direction of Liberty Island. Leo felt extremely warm in his heart, then gently hugged Emma's soft waist, put his head on the after Emma's shoulder, slowly said, I'm back. Emma reached out and rubbed Leo's face. Her smooth fingers were icy cold, as if she was strengthening her confidence in Leo's victory. She murmured softly, I believe in you, I will definitely win. For every battle with Leo, Emma was very worried, but she never showed it in front of Leo. But this battle was really beyond her imagination, even though Emma was very worried about her facial expressions. No matter how good the management was, the cold feeling on his fingers and body made Leo feel Emma's worry. Holding Emma's hand, Leo kissed it lightly and said, I made you worry. Leo, if you want to fight, promise me one condition. What conditions? Keep winning. It is good. The next day, the news of the battle over Liberty Island swept through all the newspaper headlines like a storm, making everyone aware of the horror of the powerful mutants. The Statue of Liberty, who held the torch and symbolized freedom, was destroyed in the battle. The news that there is only one arm left is even more shocking. While people were saddened by the disappearing Statue of Liberty, they turned their anger on the incompetent government and the mutants. In this way, the mutant group was once again pushed to the forefront. Hearing this result, some people are sad, but others are naturally happy. Charles will be busy for a while, mutant, haha. An unknown chuckle came from the darkness, and I saw a man with silver white hair and a stern face pointing his finger at the steel tabletop in front of him, while making a crisp, dong-dong sound, thinking quietly. Then, after a while, he smiled abruptly at a silent figure standing in front of the desk. It's a surprise to capture Deadpool. Kara, has Deadpool's memory been erased? It's cleared up, General Stryker. The enchanting figure named Kara reported the work progress to Stryker in a mechanical voice without a trace of emotion. The ultimate weapon 10 years ago did not disappoint me after all, but now the power of mutants seems to be much stronger. Just in case, the mutant genocide plan needs to be delayed. Thinking of this, Stryker said to Kara, who was expressionless in front of him, the cloning plan is going to be accelerated. Kara, we need more combat power. Yes, General. Hearing this, Stryker's face was full of smiles, but for some reason, the smile on his face gave people a feeling of chills all over his body. New York, Leo's house. Early in the morning, Leo received an unfriendly call. The call was from Nick Fury, Agent Phil's boss. Hello, Mr. Leo. You are. Hearing the unfamiliar voice, Leo was a little puzzled. I'm Nick Fury. Hearing this name, Leo remembered it. Hearing the cold voice on the phone, Leo raised his eyebrows and said in a puzzled tone, your attitude is not very friendly, Director Fury. It seems that Mr. Leo has heard it, so do you have anything to explain about the battle in the air on Liberty Island last night? He generously admitted the source of his unfriendly attitude, and the tone of Nick and Fury still made Leo feel very uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, it was a tone of interrogating subordinates or criminals. It's better for you to ask Magneto about this matter, what do you think? There was a trace of anger in Leo's tone. Just when the two were a little cold because of this conversation, a voice broke into the conversation between the two. Hi, Mr. Leo, I'm sorry I didn't help you last time, but you seem to have found your friend. Is he okay? Phil. The gentle voice was polite and full of apology, allowing Leo to suppress his anger caused by Nick and Fury, and then said, thank you for your concern, he is fine. What happened last night had a great impact. We need to find out why it happened. Can you tell us some news? Phil stated his purpose in a gentle tone, which made Leo unable to think of refusing, and then sent briefly talk about the Magneto enhancer. What you have done is admirable. Phil praised sincerely, and then said in a tentative tone, does the cooperative relationship between us still exist? It seems that because they didn't play a role in the matter of asking them to find Logan last time, this agent felt a little guilty. Hearing Phil's cautious tone, Leo seemed to have Phil's smiles in front of him. With a smile on his face, he said, of course. Thank you. By the way, we have seriously considered the suggestion you and Mr. Stark gave us last time. Suggestion. A big question mark flashed in Leo's mind. Our name, Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency, has now officially declared as S.H.I.E.L.D. Good name. Leo raised his lips. Hearing Leo's words, Phil, with a gentle tone, smiled with satisfaction, and said in a friend's tone, thank you for your appreciation, I will visit you when I have time. As a friend. Okay. Leo nodded and hung up the phone. After hearing Leo's answer, Phil smiled at Nick and Fury behind him, and said kindly, sometimes we need to show people enough respect to get the results we want, don't we? Chief. Quote. With the corners of their mouths twitching, Nick and Fury took the phone in Phil's hand and said, I'll leave the contact work of the Black Emperor to you in the future. As for the Magneto King, we still have nothing to do with them. Phil, sometimes telling the truth is disgusting. But you don't like to listen to lies, do you? Phil shrugged with a sincere look on his face. Hearing this, Nick and Fury's black faces became even darker. On the other end of the phone, after hanging up the phone, Leo handed the phone to Belle, rubbed his forehead, stood up, straightened the blue twill tie around his neck, and said, today's there is a meeting, Emma said that I need to attend, you tell Uncle Paul and the others I will not be coming back at noon today. Okay, sir. The headquarters of IO Group is located in Manhattan, New York. The 68-story EO building complements EO Group's current identity. For this place, Leo didn't come here many times, but no one stopped Leo because of his face, just because Emma made everyone memorize Leo's appearance. Welcome, Mr. Leo. As soon as he stepped into the door of the lobby on the first floor of the company, Hall, who had been waiting for a long time, greeted Leo with a smile on his face. Hall, since leaving Stark to join the IO Group 10 years ago, his status has risen instead of falling. The loyalty orders given also play a large role. So until now, he is the IO Group, oh no, the most loyal supporter of Emma and Leo. Nodding to Hall, Leo walked into his exclusive elevator under Hall's leadership under the envious or hot eyes of the employees of IO Group. It's Obadiah, Stan. In the elevator, Hall whispered to Leo the origin of the meeting. Hearing this, Leo understood it as soon as he thought about it, and then a sneer floated on his lips. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.